Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Mormon Stories podcast, Jubilee Middle Ground Edition. It is February 4th, 2024, and I'm so super excited to have with me the three other panelists whom, with me as four ex-Mormons, participated in Jubilee's Middle Ground, basically Mormons versus ex-Mormons episode. So with me today in studio is Liz. Hey, Liz.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Do we use your last name or?
You can.
Okay.
Sure.
Go
Liz
ahead.
Gunnell.
Liz Gunnell?
Yeah.
All right. We have Jillian Orr. Hey, Jillian.
Heyo.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And Dillan.
Hey, happy to be here.
And Dillan, do we use your last name?
Sure. It's Conrad.
Conrad. Dillan Conrad. Okay. All right. And for the old fogies who have no idea what Jubilee Middle Ground is, who wants to tell our audience what it is and why it's so cool?
I've been watching Middle Ground for quite a while now. Jubilee Media is a channel that has a series where they bring 8 people together to have a nuanced conversation, 4 on one side of the debate, 4 on the other. And they typically will debate pretty heated, controversial topics politically, but over the past couple of months, they've decided to get more into some nuanced topics related to religion. And now here we've got a Mormon one to watch and to dissect.
Yeah, so today we're going to do what's called a reaction video, where we, the half of the cast of this video, was released. It was released today. Please pause this if you want. Go watch it. A link is in the description. It's like 50 minutes long. Go watch it and then come back and you can enjoy our reactions. Or you can watch it here first. You may be annoyed by the fact that we're reacting every couple minutes.
Especially because this is our first time watching it.
Yeah, well, for all but me. I cheated. Margie said, you're watching that with me first. So I've seen this. The other 3 here in studio have not seen it yet. And, but I mean, why is this a big deal? Because Jubilee has like 9 million subscribers on YouTube. Like, my kids don't necessarily pay much attention to Mormon stories, but they watch Jubilee. And I think you or a lot of people close to you know about Middle Ground and think it's super cool. So that's
now you're cool. Now you're cool that you're on Jubilee. Your kids know who that is.
I'm at least in the conversation.
There we go.
Of cool, maybe.
I wonder what the view count is right now, even, because it's going to be viewed by a lot of people.
It dropped a couple hours ago, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're same day.
The Christian one's been viewed by over like 1.5 million.
Yeah. I'll check the view in just a second.
Awesome.
But we're stoked. So what we're going to do is we're going to play it, pause it every minute or two and react. But I don't know. Does it make sense maybe for each of you to introduce yourselves first and just tell our audience? Because it's fun to have y'all on Mormon Stories. Dylan, you've never been on Mormon Stories. Liz, you've never been on Mormon Stories. Jillian, you're on Mormon Stories this week.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think we kind of talk about, because none of us, like a couple of us have never met before. John and I knew each other, but it was kind of cool to see where we all came from and how we were picked or selected for this. Obviously, my history was opening my gown at graduation, and so people knew me as kind of being an advocate for the LGBTQ rights, both within the Mormon Church and within, just the university in general. And so that's kind of my history. And John and I had done a podcast before in the past about this. So I think I was selected just potentially for being a queer ally who had been raised very Orthodox Mormon throughout my past history.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were fantastic, Jillian. I'm so glad they had you on.
There were so many great moments that you had. I cannot wait to see them again.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the audience is already telling us that it's got 30,000 views, which is pretty good for a couple hours. Like, I don't know what a good number is for a couple hours.
That's definitely the
but...
YouTube video that's the only YouTube video I've been on that's had that many views.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. All right. So Jill, Liz, do you want to tell us about you a little bit?
Sure. I'm from Arizona, born and raised Mormon, and I left the Mormon Church in 2015 and read the CES letter in 2020. And so it was around 2020 that I started making some ex-Mormon content on TikTok under Lord Liz. And I don't make so much of it anymore, but because it's on there and I'm kind of sporadic with it, but I got an email from Jubilee asking if I was interested in being one of the ex-Mormons. And so I filled out their questionnaire and they had me on. So yeah, that's how I was involved.
All right. Excellent. Dylan, was there anything else you want to say about that?
No.
Okay. Any background or anything? Did you all do backgrounds?
I didn't, but
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dylan.
I was born and raised in the LDS church. I did it all. Served a mission to Houston, Texas. Got married in the temple a few years after getting home. Have 2 kids. A couple years ago, just decided that I wanted to bring up a new chapter of my life and decided to come out to my family and to my ex-wife. And that all went really well, with the way that people need their time to take to process things. And I moved on with my life, and I have a really great relationship with my ex-wife. And now I'm married to an incredibly kind and patient man who is just awesome and helpful with me and my 2 kids. And yeah, my journey about leaving the LDS church was more about just whether I felt happy in religion. And once I realized that it really just isn't something that makes me happy and something I want to continue, it was really the easiest decision for me just to step away and move on with life.
Brilliant.
Tell them how you got on. With us.
Yeah. So
that's the cool part.
I actually just applied for this. I'd been watching Middle Ground for a while and noticed that they were doing casting for Mormons versus ex-Mormons. So I actually filled out the application myself, thinking that it would just be like a cool experiment to see how far I got. And look where I am today. They reached out to me through email. I did a Zoom interview, and then I went to LA and filmed this video, and it was a really great experience. But I never thought that it would come to this. But I'm really glad, because I was ready to tell my story, but also be involved in a conversation with people who had similar but unique stories as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, for those who are coming to this link not as listeners or viewers of the podcast, I'm John Dehiln. I grew up in Katy, Texas, which is near Houston. Did all the Mormon things, served a mission in Guatemala, went to BYU, married my wife Margie in the temple, Washington, D.C. temple, had 4 kids, pursued a tech career, Microsoft, MIT, stuff like that. And then left Microsoft to start this podcast after I had a crisis of faith in Mormonism. And Mormon Stories is probably the longest running podcast in the world. It's been going on since 2005, if you can believe that. Wow. And the Mormon Church has communicated me in 2015 for the podcast. And so interestingly, this is not the first time Jubilee tried to do this episode.
That's right.
So in terms of how I got involved, a couple of years ago, Jubilee reached out to me and they said, John, will you be on a Mormons versus ex-Mormons panel? And I'm like, I guess. And they're like, you have to fly yourself out there, pay your own way, put yourself up. But if you're willing to do it, we'd love to have you. Because normally they try and pick people from the LA area because it's just cheaper, I think, and more convenient. So I did a couple years ago, right at the beginning of COVID. I flew out to LA. There were 3 other ex-Mormons with me and 4 other Mormons on the other side. We recorded the whole episode. I was so super excited about it. We were all stoked. We thought it went really well. And then they never aired it. And I was so freaking devastated and a little bit annoyed, honestly, because I had taken 2 or 3 days out of my schedule and paid my way there. And I almost did I'm mad on the internet YouTube video. I'm so glad I
glad you didn't do that.
Because I wanted to.
But then didn't they try again? This was the 3rd time.
That's what I've heard.
What'd you hear?
Well, they reached out to me.
Okay.
So it was a couple of months ago. I say about 5 or 6 months ago, they reached out to me and they said, hey, we're going to do a Mormon versus ex-Mormon coverage on this. Will you come and be a part of it? You've got to fly yourself out. You've got to house yourself and come be a part of it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to, because I'm not going to pay for it. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to do it anyways. And I was like, awesome. Good luck. Excited to see it. And then it must have never happened, because then they reached out to me again, just a couple weeks before we all went out, and they were like, hey, we'll do it again. We'll pay you out. Come out here. And so they covered it, and we all went, and we were all crossing our fingers, 3rd time's a charm, that they would actually air this one.
Yeah, they were just waiting for this dream team. This is really special.
I will say that it made sense to me that they didn't publish the first one, because the ex-Mormon side came across really well and was really strong. And then the Mormon side was super weak sauce. Not that they're bad people or not smart people. They weren't prepared.
Was it just a lot of testimony bearing?
It was just people that weren't super informed about the church or its history, people that weren't practiced at all in talking about Mormonism. And honestly, at least two of them were as progressive and liberal as most of the ex-Mormons. So it just, the Mormons just came across as either liberal or ex-Mormons or just super weak and bad communicators.
What they told me in the interview process was that the first time that they filmed it, it was too nice. Well, not nice, but they said that kind of like what you're saying, the Mormons were not taking very hard stances and it wasn't as much of a push and pull. So they kind of wanted me in the interview to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think that when we did film this, because I don't know if you want to talk about the Mormons they had, because we were the ex-Mormon panel, but the Mormons also, they knew what they were talking about. They had experience
Absolutely.
In the podcasting world talking about Mormonism. So I think we had a really great discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's important because I've already heard from my best friend who's already been watching it, and she's been telling me that she can understand both sides of it right now. Like as she watched it, she's like, I agree with them on this side, but then I agreed with you guys on this side. And I think that's the whole purpose of middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So I think they did a good job getting stronger Mormons. I was super, obviously if you're thinking about people, I'm a podcaster, probably the most well-known and successful Mormon themed podcast in the world, Mormon Stories right now. That's not bragging. I think that's just numbers. But there are several types of people that they could choose to be Mormons, whether it's Patrick Mason or Richard Bushman or Terrell and Fiona Givens or, the kind of the apologetic older Mormon crowd. But then if you're going younger, there's like, oh my gosh, there's Cardin Ellis and Kwaku and the Midnight Mormons or Ward Radio crowd or, a lot of other Jacob Hansen. There's a lot of YouTubers right now that are, even sort of ultra-conservative Mormon YouTubers. And, obviously Kwaku and Cardin have been super saying to the point of, in my opinion, defamation,
Absolutely.
saying 100%.
super horrible defamatory stuff that's untrue and in some cases life-ending. So I was worried that Cardin and Kwaku would be chosen, especially because I knew that Cardin lives in the LA area. So Margie and I drive up to the studio. We're parking in the parking lot, and I'm like, I bet they have Cardin and Kwaku on. And Margie literally says, "There's no way." And then Cardin drives up in his big black pickup truck, jacked up, and him and Kwaku walk in, and I'm like, holy crap. They chose Cardin and Kwaku. What did y'all know who they were, and what'd you think?
I did know of them, mostly through watching Mormon Stories and kind of just hearing that back and forth a little bit. But I walked in the building, and I think I was the last ex-Mormon to get there. I walk in the building, and one of the producers is giving me a tour, and she walks me over to where the Mormons are gathered, and she walks me right up to Cardin. And I'm not going to lie, he looks me straight up and down and goes, "Who are you?" Because I mean, John Delin's in the building, and he's like, "Who's this? Who's this girl?" And I did the same thing. I was like, "I'm Liz. Who are you?" And then I joined the rest of the ex-Mormons in our green room.
I think for me, Cardin wanted to approach it as more of like a buddy thing. You can even see it in the filming of the actual episode. It was more just like, "Sup, bro," and like that kind of thing.
So did you know who he was?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
I had no idea who they were. I'd recognize Kwaku's face, but not enough to know what they did or anything. I didn't know. I hadn't seen any of their episodes or content until after, which I'm really grateful that I hadn't, so that I had just a neutral space to come at it with our conversations.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was super stressed because these are guys that have called me horrible things on the internet.
I can imagine.
I didn't know what it would be like to be in the same room with them.
And looking back, I went home and watched their stuff the episodes they posted about you. And I just want to say I have the utmost respect for how you carried yourself and how you showed up and represented and how cordial and respectful you were, because I'm grateful I hadn't seen those in advance because of how respectful you were. I would never have guessed that they said those things.
Well, yeah. It was hard, but I did. I went right up to them and shook their hands and said, "Hey guys," and tried to disarm it because I think it'd be fun to talk about our goals. Like, were you guys worried about going in?
Oh,
were
yeah,
you
I
stressed
was.
about it? And what were your biggest worries or goals or stresses? Jill?
I think for me going into it was I had asked them why they wanted me. Because I know, I know that I'm known for my graduation, but I was like, why was I selected? What was the purpose for me? And so they did say that I was the only lesbian that was going to be on air. And so when I went in, I had thought about it so much because I felt that this going out to the world, I was representing the queer community of ex-Mormon individuals.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that's not what was, I wasn't chosen for that, but people who've never seen or known or learning, that's what I represent. And so I felt a lot of pressure to make sure that I was representing people well in a way that was also my authentic experience, but also that represented the community in general. So I felt a lot of pressure. And so my intention going in was to not have the most facts and the most data and the most anything. It was to be authentic as possible and to make sure that I was sharing my experience that would be able to be relatable to other individuals.
Love it. But in a way you filled a quota, you filled a checkbox, maybe like many of us did.
Kind of like a token.
Yeah. Like you don't want to feel like you're carrying all ex-Mormon queer people or even lesbians on your shoulder, right? It's a lot of stress, right?
Yeah, it did feel like a lot going in.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, I'm sure you were honored to be chosen, right?
I was. And I was grateful for it because I want to be able to represent and to stand up for individuals so that they can also understand and be a voice for them. I feel that that's one of my strengths that I can do is I can be a voice. And so I just wanted to make sure that I did it well.
A super strong voice. No, you carried it so well. There's so many great articulate moments that you had that were just fire.
So Liz, what were you thinking going in?
Yeah, I wish I'd asked them why they picked me because I don't really know how they found me, but intentions going in, I kind of end up saying it at the end of the podcast, at the end of the episode. So I'm curious if they're going to show it. But a little bit to do with, I guess, the lack of communication with my family. I love ex-Mormon content. I've been out for 8, almost 9 years and read the CES letter only 4 years ago now. And it's something that I'm still just thinking about a lot. And I watch a lot of Ex-Mormon content. I'm really interested in these topics. And I'm one of 5 kids, and only 2 of us are out. And I was the first one. My younger brother left just 2 years ago. And so, I don't know, the Mormon church it feels like a very big deal to me still. And I watch a lot of your content. I love talking about it and can't talk about it with my family. And I think that I almost took this as an opportunity to be able to talk to people that believe the way my family does and have that open conversation. It was honestly perfect, like to have this middle ground. It kind of was like a stand-in for having this conversation with my own family.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. And Dillan, so Liz, I knew you from your TikTok and Instagram, and we had communicated a little bit. So that felt good to know you were going to be there, and Jillian, or to discover. Oh, I think it's worth mentioning. Margie and I reached out to you to have dinner with a couple other friends
The night before we were filming the podcast, and you were in town. You were like, John, you reached out to me and you're like, hey, I'm in town. We've been like social media friends. I'd love to meet you in person, introduce you to some other Ex-Mos. And I was like, great, let's get dinner. And I was like, I'm so excited to tell John I'm going to be on this podcast tomorrow. And first thing I asked you, I was like, John, why are you in LA? And he's like, have you heard of Jubilee? I was like, shut up. I'm going on there tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it was super surreal to meet you for the first time and then find out that we were both going to be on the podcast.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to know who's on it. They don't tell you they wouldn't tell me who was on it. So I actually texted John. I was like, John, I'm going to do this thing. He's like, I'm going to be there too. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's fun. Okay. So Jill, I'd known you obviously, and you, Liz, but Dillan, I had no idea who you were. Yeah. So I'm like, who's this dude?
Yeah, no, you would have to search for me. My only claim to fame, and let's not get ahead of ourselves, is I was in a 2006 movie called Church Ball, where I played Andrew Wilson's, who's Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson's older brother, his son, with Gary Coleman, Fred Willard, directed by Kurt Hale, who did The Singles Ward. If anyone's seen that movie, I owe you 90 minutes of your life back. It's
so you're a child actor.
One.
You're a child actor.
Yeah. I survived that. But other than that, I don't really have a social media following.
How's the drug abuse habit?
It's a daily thing.
He just got out of rehab before we filmed.
Yeah, I'm trying. Can I actually get out of here for a second? No.
He's go to the bathroom.
But for me, I applied, and I just, like I said, wanted to have that nuanced conversation that I never really got to have with my family. To be honest, that was the hardest thing for me. Is I was on a podcast a few years ago called Listen, Learn, and Love with Osler, yeah. And it was a really good experience.
Osler, right? Osler,
yeah, but I wasn't really ready to share I wouldn't say my full story. It was just my story at the time. And so when that podcast came out, my family took a little bit of personal offense to it. And so when it came to this situation, even though I was very glad to be a part of it, I didn't tell a lot of people in my life that I was doing this. I told a few friends, my younger brother, my husband, and then it wasn't until the episode actually became a reality that I reached out and said, hey, I was doing this in LA. It's coming out this Sunday. Watch it if you want. I didn't want to get into too much detail with it because to be honest, I don't think it's for them. It's for all the people that are watching it today and beyond. I was very thankful to be a part of it. And it was the time for me to have this conversation. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, you search for me on social media. I'm definitely on Instagram, but not like this. Yeah. It was just a really good experience for me. And I was ready for it. I'm glad that I did it. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say really quickly that for me, I feel like if the world had to choose one ex-Mormon, like just because the podcast, they excommunicated me, it was a New York Times story, it went global, and then Mormon Stories is the biggest podcast. So like I'm thinking I have to sort of represent all ex-Mormons across the world, but not come off as a jerk, not embarrass my kids who are going to watch this because they actually like this show, but give lots of space to all of you wonderful panelists and to give the other side respect, have the right tone, but still deliver the messages, with passion, but not too much passion. And I was a wreck.
No pressure.
Yeah, I was a
no
wreck.
pressure at all.
And the instructions they gave us too. They were like,
absolutely,
you can cut each other off, but don't monologue, but tell us your personal story and give us a good and talk a lot, but don't talk. It's just do it all at once.
Yeah. So
it was a lot. It would have been devastating if they chose not to release it this time. I think they would have just had to wrap it up and be like, we're not doing the Mormon thing anymore because this was the way. This was the one to do.
And I'm aware of instances where stories were done for news organizations and the church shut them down, like 2020 level, Nightline level, where the church hears about it, sends the lawyers. So I was worried the church would. So that's why I didn't really talk about this.
Didn't even cross my mind, but
it's
totally.
only been 2 hours.
I know.
Watch it fast.
Give it some time.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't get deep sixed because this could reach more people about Mormonism than
yes,
it absolutely could.
Than almost anything that's ever been put on the internet. Now that might be.
I mean, they have 9 million followers almost.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah. All right. So without any further ado, what we're now going to do. Anything else before we jump in?
No, let's do this.
So without any further ado, we're going to play. It's about a 50-second video. We're going to play it and pause every couple minutes and react.
Are we going to do the Patreon exclusive?
I can pull that up.
We need to.
Do you think we should? I think it's about masturbation.
It is.
Right? Okay.
Let's start here and see how far we get.
Okay. I'll try and pull that up on the side. All right. And I've seen this, unfortunately, because Margie made me watch it with her. Fortunately, the rest of these wonderful people haven't. So let's go ahead and roll the tape. This is Can Mormons and Ex-Mormons See Eye to Eye? It's worth mentioning that they had a different name, I think, when they first released it on YouTube. What did you see?
It said, is the Mormon Church a cult religion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just
changed it to, what is it now?
Can Mormons and Ex-Mormons See Eye to Eye?
They'll probably keep it that. It could change again, but...
And there's a way to A/B test titles and see which ones do better. So there's a chance they tried both titles and then went with this one.
I was thinking that putting cult in there in the title might be a bit triggering for people, so they may have been like, let's back it up.
Or off-putting to Mormons.
Exactly,
I don't know. Yeah. All right. So this is Can Mormons and Ex-Mormons See Eye to Eye? Middle ground from the Jubilee YouTube channel. Hope y'all enjoy.
I am saying that
That's a yes or no. That's a yes or no.
Do I believe that Heavenly Father would keep her out of the celestial kingdom if she
continues to have lesbian relationships?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gen, and I explore social and controversial issues through both sides. And I'll be moderating this episode of Middle Ground, Mormons versus Ex-Mormons. And the first prompt is, Mormonism is a cult.
Coming in hot.
All four of us stepped forward.
You know, I think some of the things that are important to pay attention to are like critical things in your life that you're told how you're supposed to do them, right? Like your sexuality, the way you dress, what you eat.
What underwear you wear. What made me finally, because it was hard to admit growing up Mormon, it was hard to admit that it was a cult. But I think when you look at, again, the critical thinking, the lack of it, I think is a big red flag.
I feel like with Mormonism and growing up in that culture, which is that word right there, I had no issue stepping forward, but not necessarily to specifically focus on the negative connotation, but really just what the word is. Let's call it what it is.
I'll just speak kind of from a psychological perspective because that's my background.
Let's go.
Does the organization, withhold information from its members with the intent of controlling the thoughts of the members? Does the organization manipulate the members through emotion? And then do they have excessive control of the behavior? And while it's deeply offensive to tell anyone they're a member of a cult, no one's going to ever say they're a member of a cult because no one thinks they're in a cult.
Can we have the disagreeers step forward?
Oh, snap.
All right, let's
Okay,
stop.
pause that.
Go ahead, Joe.
The squeaky stools.
I know, I remember that. Something they missed in that was when you talked about the bite model and they cut that part out.
Yeah, huh? Unless you talk about it
Man, we
when...
filmed for like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think all the stuff that they cut out of there.
But the part where you had talked about the bite model, I think is really important that they missed. Just, do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah. So Stephen Hassan, I've had him on Mormon Stories. He's the world's cult expert. He has a book called Combating Cult Mind Control. He's viewed as the world expert. So he came up with the BITE model, which basically identifies as an acronym 4 main traits of a cult: behavioral control, strong behavioral controls, strong control of information, that's the I, thought control, that's the T, and then emotional manipulation, that's the E. That's the BITE model. And so it's a rubric from which to evaluate all organizations. So yeah, they cut that out. but Cardin does mention it. But go ahead. What were you?
No, just the part of that. And another part that I had said at the beginning was that you never know that you're in a cult.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a cult, you don't know that you're in it.
Yeah. Any other reactions? No? All right. Let's keep going.
So I'm a convert to the church and born and raised in an part member family, lived a gay lifestyle before
So this is
I joined the church.
Timber.
And it's a little disingenuous to me when people say that the church tried to hide stuff from me, because I grew up in a family that was very stereotypical. So it was just very strict, and I remember things being talked about like polygamy, like lots of sensitive church history topics growing up, and that's partially why when I distanced myself from Christianity generally to go live a gay lifestyle, I really had concerns with the church, but ultimately, knowing those things only strengthened my testimony when I came back to it. I completely left.
All right, really quickly, reactions.
With what's his name again?
Timber.
I just got very.
So for those who don't know, Timber identifies as a gay, active believing Mormon who's married to a woman with kids. Yeah.
I got really.
He's basically your foil, right?
I was just looking at him and just noticed a lot of the cognitive dissonance that was going around. It was really hard for me to look at him because of how much it seemed to me that he was not too strong in what he was saying. You could tell that he was a little bit lost. And I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but it made me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, I especially with that first comment that he made, I think I had wanted to respond in the moment, but we just kind of got swept away. But the fact that he said it's disingenuous for people to say that the church is hiding things from him, because he was told about polygamy, he was told about Adam God theory and blood atonement, and he was told everything. And I was like, you are the exception, my guy. And it was just kind of frustrating.
Yeah, because can't he distinguish? Can't he know that there's enough people that feel like they weren't told the truth about the church that he can say, I get that other people didn't have that experience,
Yeah.
but for me, I was told the truth. To label it as disingenuous was super off-putting for
Yeah,
me.
definitely.
As was him calling it the gay lifestyle. Did you guess it, Jill? Jill, do you want to
The
respond?
moment he said that, I was just like, I just grabbed
we
my
looked at
hair.
each other and we were like, did he just say that?
Yeah, the lifestyle. I'm like, oh my gosh.
You couldn't pick a more triggering thing
No.
to say to gay people in the room.
It really is. Like, that's so triggering.
And that's what he feels is like the weight, the laurel that he's going to rest on, because that's what feels comfortable for him. Because he's not. I think that's where the words are important for him, so he doesn't get too far in the weeds with the
that's what the
decisions that
church
he's
calls
made.
it.
Yeah.
That
The
is
church
true.
calls it the gay
That is
lifestyle.
true.
And so I think that's where, when you pull it away, it means it's a choice.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but going back to what he was saying about it being disingenuous about knowing this information, I think about how many people are baptized into the church not knowing those things, because missionaries aren't telling them those things. Like, nobody knows those things. Like, okay, he maybe understood some of it, but they don't know that 14-year-olds were being married off, that men were being sent away and then their wives were being married. Like, there's stuff that the members are not knowing that they're being baptized into. So that's where I was like, no,
1,000%.
you're the exception.
Most Mormons today in 2024 don't know that Joseph Smith was a polygamist.
I didn't know a huge chunk of things until like maybe a year ago, and I was raised very Orthodox Mormon.
And I think that was your experience
Yeah,
as well.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a little bit triggering. Yeah, let's keep going.
He left that lifestyle behind, and of course, I still have same-sex attraction, but I am definitely happier now being married to a woman, having kids, than I was with my boyfriends.
When I think of a cult, I think of an organization that's really controlling, and they don't let you exercise freedom or autonomy. They control how you think. They control what you say and how you say it. But if I look at Mormon culture expansively, I don't see people that are controlled. I feel like the word cult, I mean, if you break it down to mean at some point someone suggested that I live my life a certain way, then everything's a cult. And if everything's a cult, then nothing's a cult.
There are many members
All
of
right,
the
reactions. What
This was my favorite line of his.
He had such a pleasant speaking
Everything's
voice,
a cult.
though.
Nothing's a cult.
I mean, I'll just say regarding the Mormons, I thought Kwaku came off way better
Absolutely.
than I expected him to. Do you agree, Dillan?
Oh, I thought some of his points even were like quite well thought out and intentioned.
You saw that?
He was very well spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jill? Yeah. So I thought he came off well. I was sad for Utah bread and butter Orthodox Mormons because there really wasn't a like Relief Society president level woman or like an Elders Quorum president type guy. There's like Cardin and Kwaku. Kwaku's a convert, person of color, grew up in Houston, actor turned podcaster. But he's not representative really of
The
grassroots Mormonism at all. Cardin's certainly not.
I'm so glad they had Bella.
Bella was also a convert recently, though.
Bella's amazing, but
Yeah,
she's been in the
amazing.
church like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 years. But I mean,
Yeah.
And then this dude, and where were the Utah bread and butter Mormons? Not for me, but just for Mormons wanting to feel represented.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
I would have loved to know their casting process and just to
Yeah.
see how many people they looked for this because, yeah, they needed that.
I think Mormons are going to feel like they weren't well represented by this group.
I agree.
For
I
sure.
agree.
Yeah, and not to disparage them. I think everyone did their best, and they all said some thoughtful things. I felt bad. I guess if I had feedback for Jubilee, it's like hire a cultural expert. If you're going to delve into a group, maybe get a cultural expert to advise you on who you pick so that it's representative if possible. Maybe they did that, but wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
agree.
That's hard. All right, let's keep rolling.
The church who have this mindset that when the prophet speaks, the debate is over and you should just not think about it. And that's not right. I think that is cultish. But that is not what the church has taught over time.
I think, though, that you are told, seek your own answer, pray, but if it differs from what the prophet is saying, then you might be being deceived by Satan or you got the wrong answer. It should ultimately align with what the prophet is saying. And that's why they say, read the Book of Mormon, pray, see if it's true for yourself. And if you don't get an answer, pray harder, go talk to someone, have more experiences, try again, until you get the right answer that it's true. So I think it's a little disingenuous to say that you can seek truth on your own that doesn't align with the prophet, because that doesn't generally just seem to be how it goes.
Yeah, but
that was great.
It was important
That
for
was
him to
so
hear that word
good.
again.
Liz threw that disingenuous back.
I did. I had to say. I was like, "Who's being disingenuous now?" Bitch.
Well, like, we didn't talk about it. Why were y'all annoyed by Kwaku saying, if everything's a cult, nothing's a cult? Why was that annoying to y'all?
Yeah, because they kind of cut that short a little bit. I think, didn't even him or Cardin mention like interests, like Dungeons and Dragons is a cult, or
Yeah.
sci-fi
Star
is a
Wars,
cult,
yeah,
Star Wars,
yeah.
and it was just such a joke to compare a worldwide religion that controls the underwear you wear, the thoughts you think, and then to say, oh, if you like Leia, you're in a cult. Like, it was such a joke to me.
It was not comparable. It was not a comparable
Yeah.
example at all. And so, yeah, he did talk about like being in a choir or liking Star Wars. And I'm like, those don't tell you that if you aren't doing certain things, you're going to go to heaven or hell.
Yeah,
like,
whatever they
that's-
can to distance themselves as far away from the word cult as far as the religion that they chose to be a part of. That's what they're going to go for.
Yeah. And those things just do not align. And so that's why it was frustrating, because it was such a downplay of like, no, we're just like a group. Like, if you like Star Wars, like, you're a Mormon. I'm like, no, this is life and death and eternal damnation on the line. There's a difference.
Yeah,
Huge.
But Liz, that point that you can only have one correct answer was a great one.
Thank you.
Great job. Really super nice. All right, let's go to, let's keep it going.
completely goes in the face of, I was a missionary for 2 years, and the number one message we do when we present the Book of Mormon and Mormonism at large to somebody is the infamous Moroni's promise. We say, go home, pray about it. You need to develop a relationship with God that is so unique and strong that you can recognize when He is talking to you, whether or not this is the path you're supposed to take. The idea that Mormonism is a cult is a pejorative trope that has been an anti-Mormon slur against the church for a long time. And I always ask, by what rubric? You mentioned the bite model before, and I've seen that you've interviewed Stephen Hassan on your show, and he's given a rubric. Well, that same author has called anybody that voted for Donald Trump a cult. He wrote an entire book about the cult of Trump. And if you apply any of these bite model methodologies or any of these cult definitions, my show choir in high school was a cult.
Yeah.
Apple is a cult. Wait until the next Star Wars movie comes out. It's a cult. That word is used in the same way, with the same inefficacy and the inability to back it up, unless you use people that, unfortunately, in your case, were not actually being truly Mormon.
Stephen Hassan would agree that Apple can have some of the traits of a cult, or the military, or an educational institution, or a corporation, but he also has a harm continuum, a continuum of harm. And if you add up all the deaths of the People's Temple, Jim Jones, of any of the cults you mentioned, it won't add up to the number of LGBT youth in the Mormon Church that have killed themselves. And so we can talk about just severity of, children are cut off, some children are homeless because their parents kick them out. Now, I'll admit, the Mormon Church does a lot of good for a lot of people. But if you just add up the amount of harm, I think that's when it goes from just a silly trope to a very serious conversation.
That was such a great point. And that felt like the definition between liking Star Wars and being in a cult is the damage that it does. You can like Star Wars all you want. You can watch it all day. You'll be fine. If you're in a cult, there will be damage. And that's just the biggest difference. So that was a really well said point.
It was very important to call them out on the flippancy of their argument. I thought you did a great job with bringing that up, because they were so easily able to bring things up like that. So you were just like, oh no, let's make it a little bit harder for you to say that.
Yeah, because what got cut was Cardin basically saying, I live in L.A. and I live near the church where Jim Jones did the People's Temple, and I live near who was the guy, Marshall Applewhite, and the Heaven's Gate, where the people all die by suicide in the house. And his basic point was, unless there's a mass suicide, then don't call it a cult. You know?
Yeah.
And you had boom.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, count up all those deaths
Yep.
and compare it to the, you know, what's worse? You know, there's this line in a song, crack will kill you quickly. That's why it's got to go. They'll get more of your money if they kill you nice and slow. Like, what's worse? A chronic cult that results in thousands of deaths over decades, or one where everything blows up for 100 people in a year?
In a short span.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, any other thoughts about that? No?
You always have the mic drop.
No.
I love it.
Okay, well, here's Kwaku, I think, doing a little bit more distancing, but let's roll it.
I can't vouch and say that an organization as large as the LDS Church doesn't have any damage. Obviously, people can do damage, but at the same token, if we hold every organization to a standard that implies they can't have any sort of cultural stains that the entire country has struggled with, well, good luck. And as someone who believes in Jesus Christ, my hope and my goal is we can get rid of it. We can get rid of that out of our church eventually. But that is not a unique Mormon problem. That is a problem that was given to us by the generations that came before, the generations that said separate water fountains, the generations that said, oh, you're gay, you should be going to camp, whether it's a Baptist, Mormons, whatever. That stuff is evil. But does that evil make us uniquely evil, or is that a Western American problem that has permeated
It's
these
shut down
organizations?
again.
The Mormon community welcomes the LGBTQ community.
So as a gay member of the church, I truly believe that I feel welcome. I feel at home in the church. I realize some people have an issue with, obviously we have the doctrine that sexual expression should only be between a married man and woman, but that same standard applies to everyone. And the scriptures are clear that male and female, black and white, bond and free, all are welcome to come into Christ, and that's the purpose of the church.
The church agrees that no matter like what you are, and who you love, they're not gonna shun you because of that. You might not get the same privileges necessarily, but that doesn't, in the church,
Wait,
they
but
won't
what do you mean
shun.
about privileges? Like,
Such as
Elaborate.
like going to the temple, that kind of a privilege. So
yeah,
There you go, Bella.
But that also is the same for straight people. If you're not living the law of chastity and you're straight, you could have your temple recommended
it's
as well.
it's very personal, but the church doesn't specifically, when you're invited to church, they don't come up to you and ask you, are you straight? They're very welcome.
Yes,
Are you
yes.
straight? Are you lesbian? Are you gay? They ask you about
You
yourself.
don't have to fill out a form?
No.
Oh, see, when I walked in,
know.
I had to fill out a form. No, I'm totally just kidding.
Can the disagreeers please step forward, please?
All right.
It's so
any,
ick.
any reactions there?
He's so funny, that Carden. He's just so funny.
I love Bella so
I don't even
much.
remember.
What do you love about Bella?
I just love Bella so much because she says it how it is. She doesn't do these mental gymnastics. She doesn't, like, she's like, yeah, I think we welcome them, but they don't get the same privileges. And you can see that everyone's like, don't say that. Because she's like, they can't go to the temple. They can't, like, she's so straightforward about it. And that's
And
what I
genuine.
loved about, and that she's honest. And she also, like, just, she tells you how she feels about it too, and she's like, no, this just is how it is, and doesn't give reasons or excuses. She's just straightforward. I
Yes.
love her for that.
No notes, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was cool that Kwaku stayed back. So
I did
only
too.
3 of the
He was
4
the only-
Mormons came forward.
The only Mormon that stayed behind. So good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happens a few times. So those of you who are just listening, you wouldn't be able to see that. But anyway. All right. Should we keep rolling?
Yeah.
I guess they're going to have everyone else come forward now.
The concept that straight people and gay people have it equally hard to enter the temple is a complete joke, because straight people, yes, also have to deal with their trials and their faith and live the law of chastity, do X, Y, and Z, and yet they're not having to go against their instincts or their nature. It's all lined up for them. Like if we were to flip it and say that being gay is the norm in the church, let's just pretend for a second, and you were the straight one, and you wanted to go to the temple, and in order to go to the temple, you would have to swear to never sleep with women again, and you would only be able to sleep with men. That would feel very wrong to you. Yeah?
No, I completely understand. We live in a hypersexualized society, and I think that is very, very difficult for gay, lesbian, transgender members of the church, and so on and so forth. And just as Timber said, the Lord in his infinite mercy does not spare any of us from trials. But this idea that, I don't want to say that their trial is unique, because it is unique, but I look at it a little bit differently. I have leukemia.
Here it comes.
My illness will kill me 20 years earlier than Timber. You don't think on my deathbed, forgive me, you don't think that I wouldn't trade a little bit of Timber's gayness for 20 years extra on this earth? So if Timber has a loss of faith because being gay in a hypersexualized world with a law of chastity from the Bible that he doesn't understand, I get that, because we live in a cruel, hypersexualized world. But I stare down the barrel of a chemotherapy pill every day that keeps me alive. I will die probably the same time my father does. It's a trial, and it sucks, but welcome to the club. That's why.
I have to stop you right there to say.
Okay. Do we want to just let you respond, or do we want to? Do y'all want to respond now, or do you want to let because your response was amazing. Your response was amazing, Jill.
Well, yeah, Jill's was incredible, but I actually don't even remember Cardin speaking specifically about. Oh my gosh, what's his name again?
Timber.
I'm gonna get it. I promise. Speaking as an illness, I don't remember that part that he actually called it Timber's illness, and that makes me honestly ill.
That's the biggest part that stuck out to me.
I feel gross. Like it. I go for it.
I think. I mean, I'm not gonna say what I say next, but watching this, I actually forgot some of the things that he said in that. The part that stuck out to me was when he said some of your gayness.
Yeah, he said Timber's gayness.
Mm-hmm.
To have some of your gayness.
He'd like to have that instead.
I felt so bad for Timber. Like that hurt my heart for him, that he would spotlight him like that, and to say that I could have some of your gayness instead of my cancer just destroyed me, because that's not how it is. Like,
not at all.
That is who he is, and that is part of him, and it's part of the beautiful parts of Timber, and
there's no need to take a pill or anything to get rid of that.
Yeah, they're not
no medications necessary.
They're not remotely synonymous whatsoever. I really had no idea. And you were saying, I mean, I feel bad for him. Like, to have leukemia is a terrible thing, and I'm sure that he struggles with that deeply, but how is it at all related to being gay?
It just broke my heart that he was like, this is your trial, Timber. And I was like, anyways, you're gonna hear my response on this next.
Cannot wait to hear it again.
And I also want to hold space for what it's like to be a person with cancer. He also shared that I think one of his daughters also had cancer. Yeah. So like, I want to be able to, on the one hand, say, yes, Cardin, that's serious, and we're so sorry, and we grieve that, and we hold that with you, and we share with you love and respect and our condolences. And it's like, can't you see that, like, doing a swan song, not only is it weird to be comparing gayness to cancer, it's so insulting, but you're kind of commandeering the mic.
Absolutely.
When the topic is about the LGBTQ community, and like turning it to be all about you. And that felt cringy, very cringy to me.
It felt manipulative.
Yeah.
I like, we all definitely feel for him and his experience, but I think there was just, for me, it seemed like he was waiting for the opportunity. When am I going to talk about that on this filming? And I feel like he chose, it was very cringy. It was the wrong time. Like, read the room, dude.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, a similar thought, maybe I'm kind of repeating what we've already said, but leukemia, to have cancer isn't a sin, you know? Like you're born and you're sick and you can't do anything about that. And so to say that having leukemia is the same as this atrocious, in his mind, sin.
Well, trial.
A trial. It was just, it did feel like his card that he was playing a little bit, like maybe this is my moment to, which it sounds terrible to say, which is why it was kind of manipulative, because it is such a terrible thing. Leukemia is no joke.
There would have been a better place to insert that experience, and it would have been met with a lot more kindness. And it just felt so, I was waiting for Jill to just be like, you know what, like, we're not playing that card.
Well, and maybe he does see that it's the same type of trial. And that's where I'm going to hold space for him, is maybe that is his truth. Maybe his truth is that that is a trial and they're seen the same. But to me, that is still inappropriate.
Yeah.
And you pull out a can of whoop ass immediately. And so
Let's see. What did I say?
Let's play Jill's response.
Can we rewind it a little bit? Go back a bit?
Yeah. I'll rewind it.
Lead into it. Say that being gay
Sucks, but welcome to the club. That's what my father does. It's a trial, and it sucks, but welcome to the club. That's why.
I have to stop you right there. To say that being gay is a trial is disgusting. That is offensive.
You don't
That is
think
like
dying
saying-
early is disgusting to me?
Let her finish.
I am saying that the way that the church sees people being born gay is like being born with cancer.
I think she was more upset that you basically codified it as an illness.
As
No,
a
I'm saying if you
trial
have a
sort of-
loss of
No.
faith because of it.
Being gay is not a trial. Being gay in the church is a trial because of how they treat you and how they see it. How they see gay people is like being born with cancer. They're like, we're so sorry you were born this way. You can be that way, but don't do anything about it. I went to BYU. I took tests where they said, they had asked questions like, how do we treat members of the LGBTQ community? And the answer was to love them unconditionally, but understand that they will never be truly as happy as those who follow the Mormon religion. And so that is so painful to read and see, because the trial isn't being gay. Actually, being gay is incredible. Being attracted to someone of the same sex is beautiful, and I've never been happier. The trial comes when the church tells you that that is wrong, and hopefully when you die, that cancer of being gay will be gone. That's the trial.
I disagree. I think we all have equal opportunity for happiness. I think happiness looks different for other people, and I can say that I had a semblance of happiness when I was with my boyfriends. And
But are you saying she's not really happy?
No.
Are you saying her happiness is fake?
I'm not. I believe you are truly happy. And
Do you think she'll need to change fundamentally who she is as a person when we're talking about the next life in order to get that happiness that you're looking that you're bringing to the table?
I believe the Christian doctrine that sexual expression should only be between a man and a woman. But that, again, that's not an LDS doctrine.
So will Mormon Heavenly Father keep her out of the celestial kingdom if she continues to have gay relationships?
Well, he's not.
Wait, I asked him.
I am saying that
That's a yes or no. That's a yes or no.
Do I believe that Heavenly Father would keep her out of the celestial kingdom?
Carden didn't
If
want
she
to
continues to have lesbian relationships through her entire life and doesn't repent for them.
Yes, I believe that. Yes, but
He'll keep her out of heaven. Celestial kingdom. Celestial kingdom.
No.
Celestial kingdom.
Yes, we all have a standard that we need.
She won't be able to live with her family forever, which is the
Or with
Mormon
a spouse.
promise.
No, but that's
Because-
an
because-
abuse of the doctrine of eternal
Hold on. Keep going.
I mean, I believe Jesus is clear in the scriptures that there is a certain way to be able to return to the Father. And we have to be willing to sacrifice everything. He says that we need to lay down our lives, deny ourselves to follow him in order to go to heaven. And whether you believe it's the celestial kingdom or heaven or whatever it is, there is a standard that we need to live by.
That standard, it also applies to several.
All right, y'all want to comment to that?
Chills, Jillian. I got
It's a viral moment.
Chills. And also the fact that both Jillian and John, I was so inspired. Both of you, no, no, I'm talking. Do not talk over me. It was like I got chills in the moment and rewatching it just now that you guys were both so strong. You got your answers. It was just so powerful. I loved it.
You could tell that Cardin did not want Timber to answer that question. You could tell that like he was like, hold on, you got it, because that question was presented to him and he was like, oh, he's gonna say yes eventually. But you had to ask that question because it was right there.
Jillian?
There's so many, it's interesting to watch this again because so many things that either I didn't realize had been said or I was just so like worked up and you're trying to be respectful. But something that stuck out to me that really like, it actually makes me want to cry is when Timber says we have to deny ourselves. And that hurt my heart for him because we don't have to deny ourselves or who we are to get to heaven. In fact, we're supposed to embrace and love ourselves. And that part made me sad when he said that. But yeah, just reliving and watching that again was so fascinating because something that I noticed that Cardin had said before is how much he's like, we're in a hypersexual, it's so sexualized. And we're like, we're not talking about sexual things. We're talking about the way that we identify and the people that we are attracted, like the people that we want to love and who we are. We're literally talking about who we are as people. And I was like, this is not a hypersexualized topic that we're talking about. And so I'm not sure why that kept coming up, but I am so grateful, John, that you kept pointing out because I think a lot of members will say, yes, gay people get to go to heaven. But the thing that is always missed is that the doctrine is that if you are married to a member of the same sex, is that you will not be going to the highest level. You will not be allowed to be with your family. You're not allowed to be with your spouse if you are in a homosexual relationship. And a lot of people are like, yes, gay people can go to heaven, but there's tiers and there's levels and you don't get the same privileges, just like Bella said.
Yeah, but also listen, Mormon heaven, the 3 tiers, the lowest level includes like rapists, right? And killers. Hitler.
Yeah.
The only outer darkness purgatory is, hello, the ex-Mormon cast right here, like our apostates, like gay people.
I can't wait to party
are
with
going to be with
y'all.
serial killers. We're going to be in purgatory. This makes me so angry.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a powerful moment. And I was worried I was being a little bit too aggressive by making him answer the question.
It was perfect.
Yes and no.
He needed that. He needed that, and he needs that today as well. He really does.
I don't think it was aggressive because I think what you were doing is that you were making it like there's this theory and topic that Mormons have in their mind, and you were making him apply it to an actual person. Like, you really think she can't, her right there. Like, for her, you're going to say that right now. And I really appreciated that because I think you made it human. I think you made it real, that he had to recognize that he doesn't, like, does he really believe that about someone sitting next to him?
Yeah. And most Mormons, I don't think they do this intentionally, but they speak very differently to the world than they do to each other. If you go to a Mormon and say, do you believe that all other churches are not true and that you're part of the only true church? If they're in front of non-members, what are they going to say? God loves everyone. God sees all churches as true.
He wants all of his children back together.
But when we're all together bearing testimony, what do we say?
I know that this is the only true church.
Yeah. And so they do this nuance of in speak versus out speak. And heaven is another thing. They can always claim, no, Mormon's the most expansive of all churches because we let everyone in. But again, who wants to go to heaven if you're literally separated from the people you love most for eternity, which is literally Mormon doctrine. You'll never be with your kids. You'll never be with your parents. You'll never be with your partner. You'll somehow be like a neutered, genderless,
and this may come
alone person for eternity.
Yes.
This may come up later in the conversation. I remember when I was able to say something about how it is pretty common for people that talk about the celestial kingdom be like, oh, we'll be able to come and visit you sometime, and hang out, but obviously you're not going to be able to make it to the highest degree of the celestial kingdom. That's just one of those things where, like, I guess people just seem like they mean well, but it's like so hurtful.
Yeah. And
it's
church,
disgusting.
The church that claims that they're the most family centered is actually the one that takes the family apart the most.
I think about that every day.
They're the
I think God face palms all the time.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Liz?
The fact that, so like you just said, the Mormon church family is everything, so they claim, and yet only if your family is within the confines of the church, because that was taught. Like my parents told me, yeah, family means everything, but the church is number one, and family technically comes second. And then only if everyone is following all the rules does everyone get to live together forever. But if someone falls away, I mean, Mormons don't really shun as much as maybe some other cult-like religions do, but there is definitely a shunning-esque that happens where if you leave and you don't believe the same way they do, or if you're gay, your family will judge you. They will talk to you differently. It's not inclusive. Like my family, I left 9 years ago, and it is an incredibly superficial relationship that I have with my family. And yet we're supposed to, sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rambling.
No, you're not. This is important.
I get frustrated because they say families can be together forever, and it almost cheapens this life that we have here on earth, because I just get, if you're righteous, then I'll have you for eternity. So I live in LA. My whole family lives in Arizona. I talk to my family like, I talk to my dad maybe once every 3 or 4 months. I talk to my mom twice a year. Like I'm not close. We're all on good terms. I went home for Christmas. We're fine. But it's so superficial, and it's like, you don't want me in this life because I live differently than you. And yet you want me for eternity. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's just,
It's all the sense in the world.
It cheapens this life.
100%.
It hurts, yeah.
And I think why it's so important is it's the secret sauce. It's part of what drives the most cultist aspects of Mormonism, but also the vitality and the strength of Mormonism. There's this idea of no empty chairs. A parent is taught their number one goal is to get their kids on missions, temple married, and to be devout tithe-paying members. Otherwise, the parents and the grandparents will be without their kids and grandkids in the afterlife. And so it's secret. It's part of the secret formula to why the Mormon Church is a $250 billion organization. It's using this threat of not being with your family in the hereafter as it's part of the bite model. It's the E. It's the emotional manipulation.
It's the leverage.
Yeah, to make people pay, pray, and obey. Right?
Yeah, it's the leverage. Is that it's like you got to do what we say, or if not, you're going to lose your family. But if you do what we say, you're locked in for life and you're good. And everyone wants to be with their family. Everyone wants relationships and to have that closeness. And so it feels manipulative. It feels like this leverage of like, but if not, you're going to be damned in hell forever. And so it's how they control the behavior.
That's why I chose to step away from religion altogether, is I just don't believe that God operates that way.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say, when I was a missionary, we would play Families Are Eternal like video. We would, hey, we'd knock on the door and say, hey, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have a message to you about families. Wouldn't you want to live with your family forever? We're creating that scarcity, but it's like our selling point. And that's what, and then they think about it and they think, well, yeah, I want to be with my family forever. And then you say, well, you're not going to be unless you get baptized and go to the temple. And it's really problematic. Whereas Christians are just like, of course, everyone's going to be together forever. Right? There's no scarcity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's manufactured scarcity to emit emotion to then compel obedience.
I mean, look how much emotion was just brought up in this short clip. It's glaringly apparent that that's what's used.
Yeah. So we nailed it, guys. We covered it. We talked about it. I'm glad we did.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going.
Several other religions. I just don't want that to get confused that it's specifically our Mormon religion.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's several other religions. It's not just
because
This panel is about the LDS Church, though. We definitely can talk about the issues with the LDS Church.
There's 2 ways to be accepted in the Mormon Church if you're gay. You either can be celibate or you can enter into a mixed orientation marriage. And I can tell you that there's like a 70% divorce rate for mixed orientation marriages. Let me just finish. It is true.
That's not true.
So I have a PhD in clinical and counseling psychology. I interviewed 1,612 LGBT Mormons and ex-Mormons, and this is based on my published research data. And let me just finish. So you have one choice, which is to be in a mixed orientation marriage where 70% are going to fail and you're going to be likely miserable, or you can be celibate, and believe it or not, being celibate has worse depression, anxiety, and mental health outcomes as someone who's in a mixed orientation marriage. And that's why so many LGBTQ Mormons choose death.
And if you want personal, I'll give you personal. I am married to a man who used to be married to a woman, an amazing, amazing woman who God definitely had me find because of the situation that I had. I was able to have 2 biological children with this woman, and there is no way I believe in a God that is going to take away my husband and my 2 biological children that he absolutely gave me. I have them, I love them, and I will have them forever.
I think statistics are very important, but I'm very curious. Would you say you're happier now than before?
Yes, because my joy, the joy that I feel in Christ is so much deeper than the emotional, physical connection that I had with my boyfriends. It doesn't compare.
I have so much joy in Christ right now.
Can I just interject?
Let's just, and we can.
So I might be the only Mormon who didn't step forward.
Nice.
You know, I think 2 things can be true at once. So obviously, members of the church, by and large, are good people who don't hate anyone. But at the same time, we got to be realistic. Gay people aren't going anywhere, and Mormons aren't going anywhere. So what do you do? And the future of LGBT relations and the church, I'm excited to see what happens, because clearly something's going to have to happen. Something's going to have to change, because these are 2 groups that are not leaving.
Masturbation is sinful.
All right, really quickly, any final reactions to Kwaku?
I thought it was an interesting last point that he made, considering the episode that you guys just had recently about the gay couple in the Mormon Church that has callings. So it's clear that the Mormon Church is having some changes towards gay people. That's clearly having a lot of people going back and forth about the pros and cons of that. But it was interesting to hear Kwaku just a month ago, because we filmed a month ago, say the church is going to have some changes, and now we're kind of seeing that. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously this mixed orientation marriage thing is really sensitive to you. Here he's saying he's happier than ever, happier than whenever he had his boyfriends.
I just feel like, speaking about Timber again, if anyone was going to reach out, this is just me thinking out loud, if anyone was going to reach out to Jubilee Media, and after thinking about spending time on that set and be like, I really don't think that I want this released, because for some reason, I just felt like this guy has a lot of things that we all have things that we need to still figure out about life, but I don't know. It was just hard for me to be able to see him in that state of vulnerability where he had made certain choices, and even the choices that he, had made that affects his wife and his kids and what experience they will have. I mean, I was able to have a really wonderful experience with my ex-wife, and the conversations that we had were honest, and we were able to figure things out. But I just see Timber still having a lot of pain in the future, and I hope that he is able to get through that with a lot of people giving him grace. And it's just, I'm glad that it's not a place that I'm in my life right now where I was able to actually rewrite the chapters of my life in the way that I wanted.
I thought it was interesting when he asked him if he was happy. He said, I'm happiest now with Christ than I was with my boyfriends. I thought that was really interesting. And I don't want to say what that means or what that entails or why he chose those words, but that was just something really interesting to me, to say I'm happier now with Christ than I was with my boyfriends.
Mm-hmm. versus like my
versus
wife and
my
I.
wife, my kid,
I
my
love
family.
my relationship.
I'm happier with a woman than I was with a man.
It's because he's gay.
Well,
And
again,
I mean, that's not meant to even be a joke. Like, this is someone who has chosen to, again, give up a part of himself to follow Jesus Christ, when I make it pretty clear in that segment that I'm also happy in Christ, and my husband and I believe in Jesus Christ, and we have our own ways of believing in that kind of stuff. But I feel sad for Timber.
And I'll just say, having been following this stuff for a few decades, the Mormon Church is littered with official spokesmen and women that tell the church population, I'm gay, but I'm celibate and I'm happy. I'm gay, but I'm married to a woman and I'm happy. I'm a lesbian and I'm married to a man and I'm happy. And then you just fast forward 5 or 10 years, and either you find out they were lying the whole time and had secret relationships, or they were suicidal, or they eventually just can't sustain it and they leave. And what the church literally has never done is gone back to the membership and said, hey, everyone, sorry, we shilled these, we put these people up as our spokespeople. Sorry, we did that to convince you to stay on the straight and narrow. It's all blown up for them, but our bad. We won't do that anymore. What they do is they just recycle new influencers and new spokespeople. Whether it's Dave Matheson, Ty Mansfield, not to criticize them for their choices, but just to say this is not new. And we know how most of these stories end.
Yeah, that's why I get a little bit nervous with the situation that Timber has right now, is if the LDS Church starts being a little bit more open and allowing these types of things to happen with the part of Timber that he still obviously holds on to, the collateral damage is going to be his current wife and kids. If he decides to go back to that to feel more comfortable in the LDS Church with a boyfriend or with a husband, I think he'll probably choose that because, like he said, his happiness is in Christ.
I wonder what would happen if the church was saying that you could be married to a man.
Well, I mean,
and it would be okay, and
that's
where your decisions would sit. So I don't know.
It all depends on their numbers and how much tithing they.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I hope it's not that disingenuous, though. But
yeah,
my goodness. And
I do know some Mormons who say they're in mixed orientation marriages and they're happy and love it. And I guess in a world of bell curves, that could be a possibility. So we need to hold space for that being a reality for some. My concern is I always say mixed orientation marriages in Mormonism should have a big red label saying warning, chances are this is going to blow up catastrophically. And as long as it's always labeled that way, as informed consent, a warning, then let people make their own decisions.
Yeah, my ex-wife and I are an exception, not the rule. We decided early on that we were not going to make divorce and this kind of thing a hateful, dirty word, and our kids were going to not suffer because of it. I'm very thankful for that, but I know that that's not the majority of experiences for people.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next prompt that they listed was masturbation is sinful, and they put that hidden behind a Patreon paywall. So y'all will have to check that out on their Patreon. But they go right to the next prompt. So let's go to it.
Agreeers, please step forward. Women and men are equal in the church. Agreeers, please step forward.
This one was fascinating.
Yeah.
Two men stepping forward.
So for those listening.
This is one of the most glorious doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is there's no other church or religion on the earth that teaches that men and women eventually can become gods, co-creators, and co-equal partners. I mean, we do believe currently that we are co-equal partners already, just different responsibilities, but we both have the same ability to become kings and queens, priests and priestesses, and that's the ultimate goal.
I wholeheartedly believe that men and women in the church are equal, but I think it's important to define what equal is, because I'm immediately aware of what the secular anti-Mormon arguments are. At the same time, I look at our faith, and we're a faith that has codified this idea, as the Apostle Paul said, that we will be co-participants in his glory. And we have a Relief Society, which is the largest women's organization in the world. We're one of the only faiths that's mainstream or large enough to have national recognition that I know of that has a doctrine of Heavenly Mother that is actually sung about in our official hymn book. You look at women, they don't need to receive the priesthood in order to go to the temple. We're told our priesthood as men that we hold is useless unless it's applied through long suffering and patience. And we're constantly told that you are living the Adam and Eve archetype. And unless you make a decision mutually with your wife, which is the ultimate definition of equality, it's what we call unrighteous dominion. I'm very aware that some people say, oh, because women can't have the priesthood, that you're a second-class citizen. Well, and there's some cultural arguments that people might try and bring in, but in the codified faith, women enjoy, sometimes we'll complain about almost preferential treatment.
All right, so preferential treatment.
Jillian, what's that
Jillian.
term that I love so much that you told me about in LA?
Benevolent sexism. Benevolent sexism. That's a huge one. Sorry, John, what were you just saying?
Just what are the women's reactions to? I mean, for those who are just listening who didn't get to see, describe the visual optics of what was so stunning about that segment, or what's.
Are men and women equal in the church? Two Mormon men step forward.
2 of the 8, right?
Yes.
Two out of 8 people.
The female on the Mormon side did not step forward. No one on the ex-Mormon side. And then Quaco stayed back. So 2 of the Mormons and then all of the ex-Mormons stayed back about it being equal.
And the 2 who stepped forward are?
Cardin and Timber.
And they are, what's their gender?
2 white men.
2 white men.
So the fact that they would even allow... How could they even step forward as 2 men and say, let's tell all the women in the room.
So that they could fill the room with benevolent sexism.
Super cringe, right?
Yeah.
Is the internet going to blow up over that one?
I hope so.
I hope. Like, just to see them going forward and being like, we'll tell you what women think. Like, oh, I wouldn't even dare.
No, it's why it's equal for women.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And what was his last comment? Like, and some women hate the preferential treatment. Like, what was that last comment?
It's like, we're so good to women that like sometimes we men are annoyed that women have it so good in the church.
And this is a big platform that he stands on in a lot of his podcasting, is that men are not even useful. They're not even the same level as women unless they have the priesthood. And this is what is called benevolent sexism. And I actually did my final project on this at school was this. And I actually did so many surveys on it that my professor was so impressed with the responses back that she actually messed with the results, is that there is benevolent sexism means that they're putting women at a higher position. They're so benevolent, they're so great, they're so righteous, they're above men, that the damage of this is that when women mess up or whenever they fail or whenever they sin, they're knocked off of this pedestal, and there's so much damage that can be done because they're not living up to this standard. But when men who are already down here mess up, boys will be boys, men will be men. Like, it's a natural, it's what they are. We're just human. And so this benevolent sexism causes so much damage to women because of the perfectionism that they have to live up to.
Amen. I just don't understand the whole argument of women are so good, they don't have to do anything. They don't need the priesthood to go to the temple. They don't need it. Like,
they don't need to speak.
They don't need to speak. They don't need they can lead the choir. They can just relax and raise the kids. And they're better than us. It's just such a lame argument, I think. When men are talking... Oh, no, it's okay. How dare you, Jillian? You're the only one that can interrupt me right now. Just that only men are leading the meetings, deciding who gives the prayers, who... just in charge of everything. And then women get to like do the music. And I mean, it was a big deal that my mom growing up, she's very well read. She was the gospel doctrine teacher at my ward growing up. And I remember her even making a comment to me that was special, that it's normally a man that teaches gospel doctrine. So I don't know. I come from, I don't know what I'm saying, but like she was the exception, and she really worked hard for that. And it was like the biggest calling that she could get was just teaching, deeper truths about the Book of Mormon.
And something my sister brought up when she had watched this was she was saying, don't they understand that by saying this is almost a form of like Stockholm syndrome? It's a form of like, oh, we will, like, you don't have to. We will, like, you're so great, but this is why we get the power. Like, this is why we take in charge. And that they're saying these things to keep themselves in charge. Like, they get to keep the power because we're so good, but that's why they get to have this.
And I think a little bit later on, they might discuss this, but they, you know, when they first started the conversation, it was one of the highest levels in the general authority, whatever, is the Relief Society president, and someone was like,
coming.
name them.
It's coming.
Name that person.
It's coming.
And
it's coming.
Oh, good.
Don't
spoil.
Yeah, don't spoil.
You can cut that.
Really quickly, what do you guys think of that trope that the Relief Society is the largest women's organization in the world? Maven just made the comment, it's the largest women's organization in the world run by men.
Yes, yes, preach. It is. I mean, it's such an excuse where it looks like one thing, but we actually know the truth behind this is that, yes, it's this women's group, but guess what? They can't make decisions unless they get approval from the bishop. They can't do this unless the men say yes. They can't even have a girls' camp without making sure that there's men there to make sure that they're safe. Like, we have women who are EMTs or who are doctors or who are CEOs, but it doesn't matter because they still have to get approval from the bishop.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I completely forgot about this, but growing up, if you were like a MyMaid president and you picked your counselors, I remember having one-on-one meetings with the bishop. All right, Liz, you're the MyMaid president. Who are your counselors? And like, he has to approve that. Mm-hmm. Everything is approved. Even the tiny bit of authority that you get is approved by a man.
Yeah, it's true. All right, this goes on for a while. Let's go. Let's keep going. So now the 6 remaining people.
Does anyone know who the Relief Society president is? Like, can you name
Liz
the woman that is the Relief Society president over the whole church?
Crickets.
I know it was Jean B. Bingham. I don't know who it is right now. I'll be honest with you.
I definitely think that men and women are treated very differently.
With that said, I can't name the 12 apostles.
Wait.
I can't name the 12 apostles. So
and yet you could name probably the first 3, President Nelson and his counselors.
I could name the prophet, yes, but at any given time, I confess.
Let's stay on track. Let's stay on track.
I just have to say that's such BS that he couldn't name
Liz.
Freaking Down H. Oaks and Henry B. Eyring in the first presidency.
It is. That's BS because we all know who the majority of the main ones are. That was the biggest mic drop.
It was.
Liz brought the heat.
She killed it.
That was such a risk, and I was so proud because I was like, when you said that, I was like, hot damn. I couldn't even tell you who that is because nobody knows because it's not relevant. It's not relevant who the woman is of the, like, oh, it's equal, the largest. No, nobody knows who they are, but everyone knows who the prophet is.
And they were just talking so much game. The Relief Society, they run the Relief Society.
Yes.
Name one.
Then name it.
Name the president.
Oh.
You're just full of shit. It's so maddening. You're talking out of your ass.
Oh, so good. All right, let's keep going.
I do not think men and women are treated equally, and it goes beyond the priesthood. It also goes to your duties as a woman. I think a lot of the time women are told, a lot of women go to BYU or college just to find a spouse, and they're told not to continue their education once they get married and to let the man take over and be the main breadwinner. So I think that there is a difference between the duties of men and women in the church.
I think that's just a general critique of Judeo-Christian traditional household standards, I guess, or customs. I do believe women have been marginalized and men have asserted their authority and power over them in unrighteous ways and unrighteous dominion, right? But I think that has definitely changed, especially not to get into the specifics of the temple, but the temple used to say that women are basically subject to their husbands and have access to God through their husband.
And they would veil their faces as well.
That's not there anymore. And I think that is a positive step that the church is coming to acknowledge that, hey, if Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother are co-creators, co-gods, she's not subject to Heavenly Father.
In Judaism, really quickly, women can be rabbis. And I don't know if within the next decade.
Depending on the sect.
Sure. I can't see women being bishops.
personally, when I go to my church, when I'm in my ward, when I come to church, I sit down, everybody leading the church is a male, and the only female you'll see on the stand, she is playing the organ. And when she's not playing the organ, she comes back down and she'll sit with her family.
Is that why I want to know why you chose to stay back, because I thought that was very significant.
Because I agree. I don't believe they're equal. Like just like what I said, she goes up, she plays the organ, she comes back down, and all you're left with is men until other women come up later on to bear their testimony or sing something.
How have you felt your involvement has been as a woman?
My involvement, I was involved in the youth. I was like a secretary. Only secretary of the women's, obviously. Sometimes we get combined with the men, but oftentimes it's kind of you kind of stay in your own sex group. So you're always with women, and the men are always with the men, the boys are with the boys, the girls are with the girls, unless you're like adolescents, and obviously they're all together. But I feel that there is definitely segregation within women and men in the church. I do believe that they hold more power. I feel like it's not as inclusive as it should be.
So it seems like both sides can agree that, the debate is on whether it's unequal or not, but they do have different roles and responsibilities. In that instance,
I think
I would like to speak on that.
Did that impact whether you left or not?
I think it did impact my involvement in the church in general, because what I love the way that you're explaining is like a kid can sit in church and see who is in charge. A child can. Even being raised, becoming a teenager, you were only involved with the women. Even like all of these levels, all the way up to a level of an adult, of being married, of you can only practice your sexuality once you're married to a man. Only can you have sexual relationships once you're married to a man. Like, it's very clear that we as women are seen very differently. And not only that, but even the concept of a heavenly mother that we talk about, they just told us that we're not allowed to pray even to a heavenly mother. We're not even allowed to, it's not brought up, we don't talk about it. And that just so clearly displays the difference of we only speak to God the Father. We don't speak to God Mother, we don't talk about her. And what's funny is it's all of the white men who are telling us why. It's always the white men who are telling us where our level is. It's the white men who are saying, oh no, you have equal priesthood, but you can't sit on the stand, you can't pass the sacrament, you can't bless people, can't baptize people.
I'm sorry, but that is a Judeo multiracial biblical teaching that wasn't just instituted by white men. That you may disagree with it, and that's fine.
Sexist nonetheless.
You may disagree with it, but the fact of the matter is that there always is someone who presides, okay? And the scriptures say that the one who presides in the household is the man, but presiding doesn't mean is higher than, okay, or has more power over. It means the husband has to ensure that the needs of the household are taken care of spiritually and temporally, and he works with his wife to do that. But it doesn't mean he has more power over her.
But
I'm actually curious to hear his thoughts.
This little conversation right here is a microcosm of my Mormon experience, which is it's men having the power, men dominating the conversation, and then telling women why they're more important while they're mostly silent.
When you were speaking about Heavenly Mother, when first...
All right, should we pause?
Yeah. So good.
So much.
Reaction so far?
There was a lot in that. I loved the questions that you posed to Bella and gave her a moment to answer what are your thoughts and experiences and feelings being a woman in this church. So that was great to hear her talk, but then the men started to take over a little bit.
The reason I did it is because I felt hers was probably one of the most important opinions. It really was. Like, we as women can talk about it. We can talk about our experience, but her being in the church, I just loved the rawness. Like, she's the MVP of this. Like, I just think, shout out to Bella for being so honest of her experience and being like, yeah, this is it, but this is what I see, this is what I experience, here's the truth of it. And so I just wanted to know from her experience why she stayed back and what her experience has been, because it is the raw, real truth that we also experienced growing up. Everything she said was very accurate to my full experience. And I loved what she had said. And then it was so interesting how then Timber was like, no, we're equal. No, we're equal. And it's like, no, we're telling you right now how we feel. Like, listen to our experience. He's like, but Judeo, listen to the Bible. This is what it means. This is the definition. We're like, we don't care the definition. We're telling you how we feel.
Oh. So in the LDS temple, they don't do the veiling of the women's faces anymore?
No, they keep changing the temple ceremony.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And also women don't covenant with their husbands to anymore.
Really?
The women now covenant directly with God. But it used to be up until just a couple of years ago that women covenanted to hearken unto their husbands as their husbands covenanted directly with God.
Exactly.
Wow. I didn't know that was changed. I thought it was interesting that Timber explained all of that, because it kind of just proved even more that this is how it's always been. He's like, but good news, they just changed that in the temple. And it's like, see, it has been this way the whole time. Like, this has been a big deal. And I think it's also interesting, the whole like Heavenly Mother part that they bring in. Someone just asked me, they're like, what is this Heavenly Mother? Someone texted me this morning and I was like, there's nothing you can find about any information or doctrine. Like, it feels like it's just an afterthought where we bring up a Heavenly Mother and it was invented so women feel better.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost shocking to hear in this conversation you bring up, was it you that brought up Heavenly Mother just now? Yeah. It was almost shocking to hear Heavenly Mother, because we never talk about her ever. And she never even really occurred to me ever once in my childhood growing up that she was even a presence. It was just like Mary, she was a virgin, she had Jesus, and now it's Jesus and Heavenly Father, and that's all that matters, really. And Mary was a vessel, quite literally, and that's all she was. And so to even just think of her as a presence wasn't even an idea in my
importance
head.
at all.
No importance. And I think that's huge. I spent 21 years in the church, not even a blip on my radar to even think of Heavenly Mother ever.
I remember a story actually on my mission where there was a member of one of the wards that got up in the meeting, and she was asked to give the opening prayer, and she said at the pulpit before she prayed, she said, I just feel very strongly that I also need to pray to Heavenly Mother today. And she did. And after she was finished, the presiding people told her pretty explicitly on the stand, you absolutely cannot do that. And I remember thinking about that on my mission and kind of having various reactions of missionaries being like, I can't believe she did that. It was so inappropriate. And now that I'm in this phase of life, I'm just like, what is so inappropriate about that? Why? You know that she's running the whole damn thing anyway. You just know it. I mean, it's the whole thing with the conversation about Heavenly Mother is I totally see it where everybody wants to play that card of we don't speak of her because she is so this and so that and whatever. But again, it goes back to that benevolent sexism and the highest order. It's inappropriate.
Yeah, just last year, Fiona Givens was an employee of the Maxwell Institute at BYU as an apologist, and she got she had to resign because she was going to get fired. Oh. This is how I understand it. Terrell Givens was the main invitee to be the Mormon Church's chief apologist. Somehow his wife was working there almost as a spousal hire. And again, this is just my understanding, but she was talking about Mother in Heaven too much. And so as I understand it, she was told either stay silent or you can't work here anymore. And so she resigned. And so it's hard to know whether it's intentionally manipulative or just unconscious. But when they do things like in Mormonism, everyone goes to heaven and we love all churches and we've got a Mother in Heaven and no one else does. They've got to know at some level that you get in trouble if you pray to Mother in Heaven. Yeah. And you can't talk about her. They've got to know that. But it's almost like the first talking point that they offer.
Isn't there one LDS hymn that mentions?
Yeah, and they said that in the thing.
I can't remember
what is it?
Which one it is.
Oh, my Father. Oh, my Father.
Yeah. Which is a beautiful song.
Truth is reason, truth eternal tells me I've a mother there. And that's it.
That's it.
Even the Mormon scriptures don't really, as I understand it, mention
afterthought. Always an afterthought.
Yeah.
How many? That's one song out of how many? But I think you nailed it right on the head where you're like, this has been my whole experience. All the men telling how the women feel. And we're like, yep. And we still, and they keep going too.
They do.
They keep going.
I mean, they edited out a lot of Cardin's mansplaining there.
Yeah.
Which made that mic drop moment a little bit less impactful.
Because it had gone back and forth quite a bit when you said that.
Way more. Remember when Cardin, this is something that didn't make the cut, when Cardin came to you guys and said, priesthood, all you want is the priesthood.
Yes.
And you weren't even talking about the
They cut
priesthood,
that?
right?
That's right. He's like, and he did it a little bit at the beginning, and I caught that because then he's like, what else do you want besides the priesthood? Why do you guys want the priesthood so bad? And I stopped him and I was like, none of us have said we want the priesthood.
Yeah.
And I looked at Liz and she's like, no. And Bella's like, none of us have said we want that. He just keeps saying, all you want is the priesthood. I'm like, no, we don't.
And unfortunately, that didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with that.
Well,
that would have made, the point a little more impactful.
Well, when you said, can we let the women speak about this?
Coming. That's coming. I think. Yeah, let's play it.
First was speaking with the missionaries and learning more about the church. Obviously, you're always talking about Jesus Christ and the Heavenly Father and all of the Holy Ghost and all these things. And I don't know where, but I was thinking about it. I came across it. I was like, well, I wanted to learn more about Heavenly Mother. And it was probably a 1.5 minute conversation because, we don't know anything about Heavenly Mother. I was like, well, why do we know all these things and we don't know anything about Heavenly Mother? I was like, she should be equally important. I mean, she birthed the person we worship. So I couldn't fathom how we knew little to nothing about Heavenly
It's not
Mother.
even that we speak less of her, it's we don't speak
of her. Yes.
We're not allowed to. We're not even allowed to pray to her.
Well, I would, just because you're not allowed to pray to something other than, and by the way, not allowed, I think that's misrepresentation too. You have free agency, you can do whatever you want, but just because we don't have codified prayer to somebody other than our Father in
How many
heaven.
times are you going to say
3 times.
Codified.
3.
But the prophet codified.
Yeah. Drinking
Okay,
game.
well, I actually got a question for you. I got a question for you, girls.
Girls.
The division.
Oh, she said
This always atrophies into a
He
priesthood.
said girls.
I can't believe.
Pause it. When he said girls,
I remember that.
I remember being so put back like girls. And I was like, boy, buddy, little buddy. Like, it was so
I got a question
rude.
for you girls. Oh, he's so cringe.
Yeah, no, I just want to imitate. I just have a question for you girls. Just a question for you girls. Just want to.
I mean, that's so super cringe, right?
Yeah, so cringe.
Yeah. Okay, is that all?
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.
There was something else I was going to say, and I just forgot.
I'm too overwhelmed.
That threw me off.
Yeah, that was hard to believe he said that. Okay.
But do you think it's possible to have equality with the division of labor? Or would equality be achieved in your mind with women receiving the priesthood?
Here we go.
And then I have a follow-up. This just came into my mind. This isn't a gotcha. But what would satisfy your definition of equality? Must the women be given the priesthood and that's the hill we're dying on here? Or is there any other definition that would satisfy you?
I think just being able to see at least one woman up there leading the congregation for at least half of the
Well,
church
define
time.
leading. Like what?
Having an important job other than
I
Just
think
in their
women
answer.
are only
Teachings.
allowed to be leaders of the women, whereas the men can be leaders of both men and women
lead
above all.
the church.
So if women could have higher up roles where they are given more responsibility and more people in the congregation to care for and look after and given more
Positions of power.
something equivalent to the priesthood. Maybe
Okay.
not the priesthood, but at least equivalent.
So then what would you call, like, for example, Sister Espanaus? I can't name the heads of Relief Society, but the young women I can because I'm a little bit more aware of it because I have children that are youth. But Sister Espanaus, Emily Bell Freeman, all of these women that have wildly powerful positions within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I mean, Emily Bell Freeman is probably one of the single most powerful Mormons in the world. I would
Can
say.
anybody claim that the Relief Society presidency are incredibly powerful?
Oh, this guy can.
In what world? Like, what power do they have?
Yeah, they're teaching you recipes on Wednesdays and talking about raising and nurturing children every Sunday. What is the power? And they're not talking or administering to any men. They're not giving anyone blessings.
No doctrine. They can't
No
speak for
doctrine.
God.
And he's talking about the Relief Society General Presidency. And it's like, yeah, they have the power to sit up on the stand during General Conference. But like, what power do they have? He's saying it's incredibly powerful.
So powerful that they're visible sometimes.
Yeah, if we wanted to shut Cardin up, all we had to do was ask him that question.
The power to not be completely invisible.
Wow. Good one, Cardin.
That is more power than the rest of us. They get to be seen, right?
Yeah.
It's weird that he made that argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say if she put something out on Instagram, it'd probably have almost as much pull as Russell M. Nelson
Look at
in
Bella.
the Pacific Northwest
Bella.
and this side of the Rockies. So,
See Bella?
if we were to give just women the priesthood magically all of a sudden right now, it seems like these arguments kind of come from a politically secular leftist stance of like representation, which I get, I understand. Movies are cooler when you see somebody that looks like you in it. I get that. But then would you want to preach from a Bible that's almost written wholly and completely by men? At that point, would the demands of equality require that we have equal representation in the books? There's only one book of Esther. Now we'll take one book out of the Septuagint and ignore the Book of Mormon because there's not a single one that's written by a woman. Like, I don't see, unless we accept the dichotomy that there can be equality with a division of labor, I don't see where it ends even after giving women the priesthood. And this is an honest question.
I think it's even taking a bigger step back from even just having a position of power. But like, first of all, yes, I do think that women should be able to be a position of power. It is the whole doctrine of the church that how women are seen and how they were treated. It's bigger than just a position. It's how they are treated. It's like, these are their responsibilities. This is the woman's responsibility. In the doctrine of the family proclamation, it says very clearly what a woman's job is and what a man's job is. And guess who wrote that? Bunch of white men. Did any of the women get to write that or present it? No. The men did. Do women get to even be a prophet? No, there's never been a woman prophet. And so we always have these assumptions, but it really is how women are treated in general and how they are seen of their position in the church as a whole, not just by, okay, you can be over all the women. Congrats, you have a big Instagram. It's bigger than that.
It's okay for the doctrine.
Love that Instagram jab. That was so good. What did you think of his argument that this woman who I've never heard of, if she posted something on Instagram, it would get more attention than Russell M. Nelson? Is there any world where that's true?
No, and he didn't even know who she was, so obviously it didn't. He's like, she has a bigger Instagram following, so that's her big power.
I will say that they let Cardin down easily with that
Edit?
thing. Yeah.
Because they left off a lot of cringy stuff.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you remember?
I don't. I just remember a comment I made at the end of that segment, which was to Cardin saying, Cardin, my welcome into Relief Society was a spatula. Like when I
can't believe
when I was
that.
welcome to Relief Society,
That was good.
they gave me a spatula and a hand knitted like oven mitt. And it was like, you're a woman now. You can like cook for your kids because you're like gonna get married and have kids and you can cook and use your spatula. And it was just.
Do you still have that spatula?
Yes. No, I don't. No, I don't.
It's interesting how he kept going back to the division of labor, the division of labor, the division of labor. It's like, you're missing everything. He's missing the whole point. It was, besides the priesthood, besides getting this, if we could invent another one, and even Bella was like, if there was another example of another invisible superpower that the church has invented for men, if we could invent a superpower for women too,
yes,
then we'd be equal. And I'm just like,
so they did cut the part where you said that we're not talking about the priesthood at all. No one is saying that they want the priesthood.
It was right before that last comment that I made. I was like, we're not even talking, no one has mentioned that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's like he had a prepared answer he came to give to a question y'all weren't even asking.
Yeah.
Well, even the question that he asked the girls, he kept going. He didn't let anyone even respond to it. He would come up with his own answers because it seems like to me there's nothing that could be done.
Yes.
It's like you just asked a question.
He asked the question.
Let the girls answer.
Answered it, then asked the question, and then answered it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a powerful
I can't wait for his family to watch this.
Well, we'll be curious to see. I'm sure Word Radio is going to do a reaction.
Yeah, we'll get to see like the
right?
comments, like, congratulations, Carden, you killed it.
Yeah, I can't
It was
wait.
amazing.
You codified it, Carden. You codified so hard.
We should have had shots for every time you said codified.
Seriously, I guess we can do that
He
tonight.
did say codify.
Right.
Margie was even saying,
3
would you
times.
stop saying codify? It comes up more, by the way.
Does it
We're
really?
not, we're not
Come
done.
on.
Yeah, we're not done.
He said it in every segment.
Yeah. It's all about codified. Okay, this is fun. All right, let's go to the next clip.
Doctrine to change.
It's okay for the doctrine to change. That's the prompt.
I really enjoyed this one.
There's scriptural precedent for it changing, and one of the most beautiful aspects of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the fact that we have and rely upon modern prophets, and we take what they say seriously and look forward to that prophetic revelation. But at the end of the day, we still have to go home and get that same revelation. We have to get that same answer from God directly from Him that dovetails with that revelation, so that we know in our core that that is what God wants for His children. We don't have a static God.
I disagree there, because God is unchangeable, as it states in the scriptures. There are eternal principles that are eternal. They never change. But how those principles are applied can change over time. But the eternal principles remain the same, period. If we don't have any objective, solid, eternal truth, then everything is relative, and relativity leads to chaos.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about understanding God and eternal principles. I mean, we're talking about cosmic law, multi-dimensions, everything so expansive. And all of that information, part of it is being channeled through the mind of fallible people who are writing things down in a fallible language, being interpreted to people with fallible understanding.
Modern times, you need modern measures. So it's useful that we have prophets on this earth to this day, because everything is ever changing. I mean, you look at our language and look at the way it used to be, look how it is now. It's just, everybody needs an updated interpretation.
One of my favorite things about the Mormon Church is how much has changed. And I can think about 3 issues that really troubled me when I was an Orthodox devout member. One was when I went through the temple for the first time, and I had to slit my throat as part of, use my thumb as a sign to slit my throat as part of a covenant I was making in the temple. I was super glad when I found out they took that out in 1990. The second was, I'm old enough to remember when Black Mormons were not allowed to hold the priesthood. They were not allowed to hold certain offices in the church, and when they were kept out of the temple with just basic temple blessings. And I was super happy in 1978 when they allowed Black people to be members in full standing. The final one, my grandmother was the daughter of a 3rd wife, so I come directly from a polygamous ancestry. And it wasn't until I was 30 or 31 that I found out that the founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, married over 30 women, 14-year-olds, other men's wives. That information was withheld from me for 30 years. And I was super happy that over time the church has distanced itself from polygamy, because I think it's one of the most horrendous teachings that the church has ever had. So I'm super grateful the church changes, and it does.
I have to push back, because I think there's some things that are misconstrued as doctrine that are policies, and we see that as the church.
Which thing that I just said was a misconstruction?
Blacks not receiving the priesthood.
Isn't that just a fact?
Well, no, but you're saying it was a doctrine that changed.
Well, the first presidency, the prophet and the first and second counselor prior to 1978, on multiple occasions signed statements saying that it was doctrine that Black people could not be members in full standing. That's the first presidency in the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah, but that was a corruption.
Look at Quake's face.
Joseph Smith baptized free men. He had a presidential platform based upon abolition. The Mormon Church was basically an abolitionist entity that the government feared in the West for its first 50 years. The fact that it adopted some bad ideas of the curse of Cain because of Protestant influence coming from the South, especially when Parley P. Pratt returned as a missionary from the South, and the pressures put on Brigham Young as a governor of the state of Deseret, that is an abuse of history.
But it's your prophets, the people that you believe claim spoke to God and that I used to believe, they're the ones signing these statements. It's David O. McKay It's people that you sustain as prophets, seers, and revelators. So how do you know when they're speaking as a man? How do you when they're excluding entire race of people from full participation? How do you know they're speaking for God or speaking for themselves until the social?
I answered that right at the beginning of this whole entire prompt. It's a two-part path. You receive revelation from a prophet, you go home, you pray about it, you confirm it. Like, I actually really appreciate this question because it gets to the root of epistemology.
Should we let Kwaku answer this?
I think the human ego speaks when we want our environment and the bubble we're in, because everyone lives in a bubble. We don't want that bubble to change, no matter what. Human beings are prideful. Human beings have ego. Everyone does. I look at some of the things our church leaders said, David O. McKay, right? Brigham Young, Joseph Fielding Smith. I know they weren't, singing Kumbaya with black people. I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, I understand that people are also products of their environment. And I don't want to condemn someone who's not here to defend themselves. And in the same way, 100 years from now, someone will look at us and they'll say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys were using your Cobalt iPhones built by child slaves. Please don't deny my humanity 100 years from now.
Well, look at a New Testament example, Peter. Peter was the leading apostle during the time of the original apostles, right? And he was making Gentile converts get circumcised. And Paul confronts him to the face, saying that this isn't necessary. So you have disagreement within the apostleship. And
but doesn't the Book of Mormon say that God cursed white people with dark skin for their wickedness? Isn't that in your scriptural canon?
It depends on your interpretation.
I've never read it that way.
What's your interpretation?
Well, there's scriptures in the Old Testament where certain individuals say there's a skin of blackness upon me that is totally symbolic of being in a state of distress, or
Solomon, I am black, but come Leo.
Yeah.
So what did God do to the Lamanites in the Book of Mormon in your interpretation? Did he not turn their skin dark because of their wickedness? Even though the book says that?
No, I think it was a spiritual mark. Just like with Cain, we don't know.
But it says skin of blackness in the Book of Mormon. It says skin of blackness.
It's an idiom. There are many idioms that are mistranslated.
Doesn't it be convenient to call it an idiom?
No,
when it says skin of blackness.
Because you need to.
And when it talks about their dark skin, that God made them dark so that they'll be loathsome to the white skin.
It's not, because if you're a biblical and Greek scholar, you realize there are idioms like this one, which is well known in ancient scripture as being a symbol of being in distress.
As a dark, can I speak? I've never read it that way. The Book of Mormon is by and large about Native Americans. And whenever we bring up the subject of race, suddenly it turns into Europeans being switched into sub-Saharan Africans. But that's not what the book is saying. When I read the Book of Mormon, I'm seeing Nephi, which is where this comes from, the cursing. Nephi hates the Lamanites. He's finding every single way to dislike them. And then his brother Jacob comes and says, hey, you should not hate them because they're darker than you. And then Samuel the Lamanite, the dark prophet, is speaking to the white Nephites. And he's saying, hey, no, you're actually cursed. And they say, let's remove him from the record. And Jesus comes in and says, put him back in the record. It's showing a history of prejudice and how to overcome it.
So what does skin of blackness mean in the Book of Mormon?
Yeah, Nephi may very well believe that. Jacob doesn't. That doesn't mean it's prescriptive. That means it's descriptive.
Okay, so you're saying
To Kill a Mockingbird is racist.
You're saying Nephi was racist, but not God.
I'm saying possibly.
Okay,
it's effectively diaries.
That's cool.
Cool, bro.
Wow.
Cool.
All right, reactions. That was a lot.
That was a lot. That was a lot.
I loved Cardin's defeated face in some of that. He's just like.
It's interesting. Okay, so
was he defeated, or was he like, I wish that we could really talk about this in depth and I could say more?
I don't know.
Probably that.
Do you think?
Is my.
I think he's
vibe.
like, I have a lot I want to say about this.
Yeah.
I think Kwaku was the one that should be talking about it. And it's interesting how Timber was like going. And he's like, as a dark, can I speak on this? And I was like, yes, you should be speaking on this.
Yes.
But it's interesting to hear their mental gymnastics around the skin of darkness, because the church has never said that. The church has never said it's an idiom like this. I was raised reading and understanding they have dark skin, they have light skin. There are pictures, there's illustrations, there's stuff in the books that we read and we're raised in that's what happened is when you became a sinner in the Book of Mormon, you got a skin of darkness.
Yeah, an idiom just feels so much more comfortable for people.
Did any of you ever even hear the word idiom growing up in the Mormon church?
I've never heard that explanation till just then. And I was like, oh, that's a twist.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I heard from, I don't want to out any family members. This was a while ago, but my parents are, my dad just turned 70, so a little bit older generation. And I definitely heard growing up, like a lot of kind of racist remarks. I was told that white people should marry white people. Interracial marriage is a no. I remember me and my twin sister got really upset at someone in my family that said this, and I don't think this was when we were teenagers, so maybe they've come along. But we had a young woman leader that was Black. She was married to a white man. We loved both of them so much, power couple, and someone in my family said they shouldn't be married. They shouldn't be married, and I just think that that's how deep the racism is in the church. That it was just such a. It was a very normal thing, I think, for me as a kid to hear a lot of these like racist remarks. And so I definitely think I had some, I'm losing terms, like some instilled like racism that I had to like get over being raised Mormon, because it's kind of, people will disagree, but I think that it's baked into the religion personally.
It is. It's codified.
Yeah.
It's literal. It's doctrinal. And the fact that they were trying to downplay it as like a metaphorical thing. Or how about that argument that maybe Nephi was racist, but God isn't racist?
Yeah. So it's okay.
Totally
so it's okay.
valid.
Well, then another prophet was racist then. If he was, then Nephi was a prophet. There we go. Add that to the list.
Yeah. That was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
All right. Let's keep going. So this is the Ex-Mormons joined.
Whether the doctrine can change, it was, is it okay for the doctrine to change? And I feel like that puts the church into a very precarious situation, especially going back to our last discussion when you said something that's still kind of in my head, the doctrine, the abuse of the doctrine of eternal family. Can the doctrine of eternal family, is it okay for the doctrine of eternal family to change within the LDS church?
Is it okay? Again, I would just say, I guess define okay. Is there a scriptural precedent for it? And it could, yes, absolutely. If a prophet were to come out and say, I've received a revelation from God, and X is going to change, and then he announces it in general conference, and I go home and pray about it, Timber goes home and pray about it, and we realize, okay, cool, this is a revelation from God, it's changing.
What about the families that lost so many sons and daughters to suicide because of that never-changing doctrine of specific eternal families? You cannot go to the celestial kingdom because you believe in this. We'll be able to visit you every now and again. We'll have a little family reunion, that kind of thing, but you just can't come in and visit us up there. If that changes, the LDS church is, they tried to do a little change-a-roo in 2015 where they were like, children of, same-sex households can't get baptized. And that was changed real quick.
Again,
and my
that's
parents,
a policy.
and my parents, but we're talking about
Would you want me to answer the question? Or
Yeah,
okay.
oh, definitely.
So, first off, individually, just man to man, friend to friend. Hopefully we'll become friends.
Cringe.
If somebody actually said that to you, what you just articulated right there, that is not Christ's doctrine applied through Christ-like love. There's 3 or 4 things that are wrong with what has happened to you guys if you guys are indeed regurgitating the story the way it happens, and I believe you. So on the individual level, I want to say, I see you, I validate what you've gone through, and my first initial reaction would be to very quickly delineate between the church with a little c and a church with a big C. I will tell you, the church with a big C and its codified doctrine is loving to all, gives an eternal, immeasurable value to every soul, and views you first as a child of God, not as a gay man, not as an ex-husband to a woman or a current husband to a man. It sees you as who you are. With that said, we all have really cringy, awkward friends who've said incorrect, sometimes maybe even cruel things to LGBTQ members, justified by false conceptions of God or misinterpretations of doctrine. And their bigotry they have tried to couch in religious writ or religious culture, and that is wrong simultaneously. If we're talking about, is it okay that doctrine changes? Yes, there's a completely, totally codified runway for how doctrine can change in our church, and it is okay for us as members because there's a mechanism for recognizing that as the revelation.
I think it's safe for the LDS Church to delineate between policy and doctrine, because if they change certain things that they've deemed doctrine, they're
I think the problem is it keeps changing. And what happens is the prophet will say something, and then he says, this is God's word, and he does something like how youth couldn't get baptized if they were the children of queer parents, but then it swaps.
He did say when he said this is doctrine, this came from God.
And then it swapped back. So the problem that I have is that it's not that policies or things can change, it's the fact that we're constantly attributing things to God.
Yes.
And then when it changes again, we're like, oh, it was policy. Oh, it's a fallacy of man.
What kills me is, like, I was taught that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so on one hand, I feel like doctrine shouldn't change. And when we do see the changes happening, a lot of the time it's because of social media, it's because of headlines, it's because of the church trying to become more acceptable in society.
More transparent.
So with doctrine like polygamy was once practiced, now it's like an LDS thing, but it was once practiced by the mainstream church. Now it's been disavowed. We no longer do polygamy.
Well,
and yet,
technically it still is practiced.
In heaven, polygamy will be practiced. It's the way, it's the law of heaven, polygamy. And so I feel like it's been disavowed here on earth to like appease society, and yet in heaven.
So to summarize, like you're essentially saying that whenever there's social pressure that changes it,
Yes.
it gets
I don't think
put
it's-
into policy.
I don't think it's
okay for
Not to be a jerk, but this just sounds like, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but it sounds like you're just having a gripe. Like, yes, you can be frustrated that things have changed back and forth, but it is good for organizations to change for the better. I don't understand how anyone can say it's wrong for doctrine to change.
So I came out in the prompt. Okay, really quick, let me go ahead and pause and then we'll keep going because that's a lot.
Because it's a lot, yeah. I don't know if we'll get like flagged if we play too much of their video in one go.
What do you guys think of this big C, little c church idea? Have you ever heard in a Mormon context a leader say, look, there's the big C church, which is the doctrine, and when we're talking, you really need to obey and listen to us. But hey, members, there's this little C church where, like, if you don't like what I say in general conference, or if I'm sharing an opinion that's cringy or awkward, you don't have to really believe it. Did you ever hear that growing up in the church?
Actually, I might be the only one that feels this way, even in the comments, but I actually don't really fully understand what the term Mormon apologist is. So would you be able to provide some context? Because it almost seems like it's someone who has to explain away these types of terrible things that people hear about the LDS Church.
So the term apologist is not a uniquely Mormon term.
Right.
I think it just means a defender of the faith. So like Christianity has a long multi-century tradition of apologia or apologetics, where whenever problems with the Bible, like slavery, like women being silent in the church, like what it says about homosexuals in the Bible, someone's got to stand up and explain why that's not a problem.
So it's usually used as a pejorative. So Cardin and Quaku wouldn't call themselves Mormon apologists. Only people would refer to them as Mormon apologists.
So it's both. I think there are plenty of apologists in Mormonism and in Christianity that are proud to use that term, but it becomes a pejorative, especially for people who are critical thinkers, because it leads to these sort of really strained, awkward explanations. So the funniest example, the funniest example in Mormonism is we've got this horse problem in the Book of Mormon, where during the time of the Book of Mormon, there's not supposed to be horses. because in Mesoamerica and South and Central and North America, there weren't horses during the time of the Book of Mormon. That was like 10,000 years earlier. So what do you do with that? So a Mormon apologist out of the Farms Institute out of BYU speculated that maybe when the book says horse, they meant taper.
Okay.
And so what that's led is to like, memes of like Native Americans riding around on tapers. But, that's all they've got to work with.
I remember hearing the horse thing from the film God's Army.
Yeah.
Where they, like the guy that is struggling a lot with the religion throughout his mission, he keeps referring to certain things because he's reading anti-Mormon literature, which is interesting because Richard Dutcher, the director of God's Army, eventually did leave the church. And I feel like Richard Dutcher, he hasn't made films for quite a long time, but I feel like he is one of the most prolific, talented creators of that kind of work because it really shows the nuance that he's able to provide on screen. I've always really appreciated his work.
We've missed his work. What do y'all think about that conversation?
Just going back to what you're saying was like his big C, little c of like, well, there's these rules, but then there's the other rules. Like, there's no difference.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. I'll ask you both about this. What about this idea of doctrine versus policy? Have you ever, in your Mormon context, heard a leader go, "Now listen, X, Y, and Z, that's doctrine. But this other X, Y, PDQ, that's just policy, and you don't have to follow it because it's not doctrine."
It's almost like they're like Kwaku and Cardin and Tim, they're trying to say when they're coming out saying it's policy, it's like the prophet is already saying he's speaking as a man. He's already just like owning the fact that he's speaking as a man. It's policy, it's not doctrine. But whenever the prophet speaks, it is doctrine. And then when they're wrong and they're speaking as a man and it's convenient, then it's a policy that can change willy-nilly.
There's so many statements that I remember being raised in that it's like a prerequisite in case something doesn't work out. That's what it feels like to me. It's like
100%.
Is that
safety net.
We have to say they're just men, they're just human, but they speak for God. So when they want you to follow it, they're like, the prophet speaks for man. And they also say that live revelation always trumps past revelation. But then when it doesn't work out and something needs to change, they're like, oh, but he's just a man and this is just a policy. So it's like they get to decide in their favor which one it gets to be.
Yeah, I had family members that when it came to the 2015 policy regarding same-sex couples not being able to, their people living with them not being able to be baptized until 18. Family members of mine were just like, oh, the reason why it changed is because they weren't, the people that were struggling with it weren't able to handle it. They weren't strong enough for that. So God in his infinite wisdom and kindness and love was like, oh no, we'll go ahead and change this because you guys just aren't ready for this. And it just feels so icky to me. To me, I saw it immediately as we messed up. We're fallible men and we messed up and we're going to have to treat it like God changed his mind or how, I don't even know. They knew that they stepped in it and it was glaringly apparent to me.
It's just always that circular reasoning where we're right no matter what, because if it's not this, it's that. If it's not policy, it's doctrine. If it's not doctrine, it's policy. He's speaking as a man. No, he's a prophet. It reminds me of things like, if you receive a priesthood blessing and you're sick, and it's like, if you're healed, it's God's will. If you're not healed, it was God's will. Then it's like, what's the point of the blessing then? If God's going to do what he wants anyway. So it's just like how you can be right no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. RFM is texting me and he made the joke that a doctrine is just an unchanged policy. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There we go.
Like,
hasn't changed yet.
Yeah. Yeah, like yesterday's doctrine is today's policy. And today's doctrine is tomorrow's policy.
I remember being taught that everything over the pulpit that said, especially around General Conference, is doctrine. Like it just is.
And what's the primary song that we all know about prophets?
Follow the prophet.
Follow the prophet.
Yeah.
Follow the prophet. Don't go astray.
Yeah, he knows the way.
He knows the way. It's not like follow the prophet unless you consider it policy. Follow the prophet. Unless
caveats.
It's awkward and cheesy and outdated. Follow the, Anyway. All right. Let's see what the next moment is here. Because I'm grateful that the church has made these changes. The problem is that they don't own up to the mistakes they've made. They've never apologized to black people for excluding them for over a century. The problem is that when the church teaches something as doctrine to all its members, and it leads to carnage, whether it's LGBTQ deaths, destruction of families, systemic racism for over 150 years, the church never owns up and apologizes and says, hey, sorry, black people, we excluded you for 150 years. Sorry, parents of LGBT and siblings of LGBTQ youth. Sorry that your kids died. The church just says, that was just policy. That they were all speaking as men, but then they turn around and say, but if the prophet's speaking now, you have to obey the prophet and you have to follow the prophet.
I think
so
that's
the church never atones. It never does what it asks the members to do.
I'm saying this as much grace as I can muster. Our beloved prophet, Russell M. Nelson, he is nearly 100. I'm not kidding.
99?
He's 99. And he is running a global organization. When he was going into college, the prophet of our church at his time was still a polygamist, right? I mean, we're talking about old people that he was born before the television, the former Queen of England, and Martin Luther King, and has outlived 2 of those 3 things, okay? So again, give him grace. These people are doing the best.
But then what's the value of a prophet?
Ooh.
Like, do you believe he talks to
The
God?
value of a prophet is look at the people.
But he talks directly to God.
Sometimes,
face to face,
maybe not.
maybe. I don't know.
But like God tells him the truths that he needs to know for the world today is what you believe.
We're talking about a beautiful cosmic entity that is Heavenly Father trying to channel information through a 99-year-old man in Salt Lake
But
City.
he does, yes?
Oh, yeah, to you as well.
Yeah, but it gets to...
So am I a prophet?
I don't know, are you?
Nice one.
That was my favorite prompt of the whole experience. I thought it just brought out so much interesting nuance.
Yeah. You guys?
He wouldn't answer the question because I was born and raised, and it's right. Everything is that the prophet speaks to God. He speaks for God. He speaks to God. He speaks for God. That is what is ingrained, is that we follow him. Whatever he says, it's because he talks to God. And that's what I wanted to see if he would say, if you believe that he talks to God, yes or no. And he's like, well, but he's old.
And he talks to you.
And he talks to you. And then what's the point of a prophet? Because what I'm trying to get with this point is, if we really believe that he is the prophet and he speaks to God, can't he just be like, hey, God, where are we at with LGBTQ people? Where are we at with Heavenly Mother? What do you want? And we're not. We're getting so much confusion. We're getting so much back and forth, because I was told that there are even places in the temple that the prophet goes and sits in and meets with God face to face.
Yeah.
I was told this. I was taught they're special. It's called the Holy of Holies. And they go and he speaks to God. And so that's where I'm like, okay, if we do believe this, then why isn't he asking these crucial, pivotal questions, and why are we not getting crucial, pivotal answers, and why are things changing?
And my opinion has never changed regarding how, the prompt being, is it okay for the doctrine to change? I really appreciated how John was able to bring up the fact that the LDS Church has never apologized for any of the things that they have done in the past, whether it came to how they treated blacks with their experience or LGBT. It was just, for me, I feel like the church is just going to be on such a unshaky ground with lawsuits and stuff because of all the horrible things that have taken place because of their doctrine / policies. And I just don't think they don't think it's okay for the doctrine to change, because if not, then they don't have that steady footing.
Yeah, can any of you remember, this rhetoric that Kwaku's using? And I think he believes it, but I think it's just so misleading. Because have you ever heard somebody say, well, Russell Nelson's 99. He's just a dude. He receives revelation from God just like the rest of you.
I feel like the church would need to release some kind of statement like, this is not what we believe. We believe he is of sound mind and he does speak to God.
Yeah, and something they cut out of that was that Kwaku's like, well, not all prophets are the same. He's no Moses. He's no... And I was like, what? Because to me, growing up and understanding
cognitive dissonance.
Is a prophet's a prophet, but he's not like NBA level prophet. He's like minor league prophet. So I'm like, oh, there's levels now?
It's back to that in-speak versus outspeak that you were talking about, John. Imagine if Kwaku was at the pulpit saying this about the prophet. Would never happen.
They'd turn off his pulpit and ask him to sit down.
Yeah.
Can you please sit down, sir? No, that's the prophet you're talking about. It just wouldn't happen. And so it's frustrating that there's this double standard, and they can always get away with it. It's just like, just admit, like you were trying to get him to admit to you. Does he talk to God? He's old, is what he was saying.
You talk to God too.
Yeah, you also.
Am I a prophet?
And by the
that
way,
was perfect.
I'll just say it again. I think Kwaku really believes those things. And I think it was bold for him to say things like he's an old dude. He talks to God just like we all do. But it's not representative of Mormon doctrine and theology.
Yeah.
And these things that are being said by Cardin, by Kwaku, by the other guy,
Timber.
I finally learned his name.
they're saying things that could never be said over the pulpit and that they would be punished likely for saying.
I think the church is going to be really cringe that they're representing the church right now.
You do?
I do. I think the church is going to be upset about it.
Because they're
Personally-
not, wait, because they're not orthodox enough? Because they're too liberal, or because they're embarrassing?
Honestly,
those are two different problems. I want to hear each one of you answer this.
I feel like they were taking a lot of different swings personally with what they believed in, and I feel like the church is going to be like, that's not that was your opinion.
So for you, they're not representing orthodoxy adequately. Liz?
To be honest, I think the church is going to be stoked. I think the church is going to be really excited that they have these young, hip Mormons talking about how nuanced and progressive the church is. It's so welcoming to get people to come in, and it's like, it's normalizing Mormonism. Like, we're not as weird as you think. And then you get inside and it's like, oh, wait, they're not saying this stuff at the pulpit. So I think the church will personally like it. Because I think it paints them in a better light.
And I see that's why I think they're not going to be stoked about it, is because I think just because Kwaku represented that, the group did not. I think we really pulled out the rawness, is that the church wants to be perceived as being very progressive and that we're starting to be more accepting. But I think when it came down to it and we held them accountable to it, that we're like, but it's not. It's not this way, and it's being perceived that it is. And so I think that's why they're going to be upset about it.
And I still, this is my interpretation on it, and someone else might have a better understanding, but I was always very confused when they asked President Uchtdorf to step down from the first presidency when Russell M. Nelson became the president of the church. And I had always seen Uchtdorf as someone who was actually a little bit more progressive than most, someone who would be probably wanting to talk about, like, well, what about the LGBT stance on certain things? How about how they would feel about certain things? And I think when Russell Nelson became the president, he was like, you know what? I just don't know if we need someone exactly like Uchtdorf. And I think the way that it was talked about was that he just wanted to do a different thing in the world and explore something different. But I was like, he was in the first presidency. I don't think I could be wrong, of course, but like, I don't think anyone's ever been demoted like that from the first presidency.
It's happened a couple times. It's super rare.
Yeah, I was my family was just so like, oh, he can just do whatever he wants. He's happy doing whatever. And I'm like, Uchtdorf was, he kind of got it. Like, he was pretty progressive with certain things.
Yeah, he's been silenced and he was demoted for sure. Yeah. The one that I'm aware of in my lifetime was Hugh B. Brown. So David O. McKay was prophet for a couple decades. Hugh B. Brown was one of his counselors. He was super liberal. So like in the early 60s, Hugh B. Brown, as a member of the first presidency, was saying that he hoped the black members would get the priesthood soon. And during the later years of David O. McKay's presidency, when David O. McKay was sort of senile, Hugh B. Brown pulled a move to try and get the priesthood restored in like 68, 69. Wow. While some of the apostles were like out of town. He actually held a vote. The vote went through. The priesthood would be given, and then a couple of the, like Carol B. Lee or a couple of them came back into town and scuttled the deal. So when David O. McKay dies, Joseph Fielding Smith becomes prophet, and guess what he does to Hugh B. Brown?
Demotes him and kicks him out of the first presidency.
Retracts it.
As a punishment for his liberal advocacy.
That's what I feel like happened to Uchtdorf for sure.
Who was president in 1978 when it was?
Kimball.
It was Kimball.
Spencer B. Kimball.
Okay.
Yeah. Not Joseph Fielding Smith.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It's just interesting.
Also not Harold B. Lee, because they were more bigoted, frankly.
It's super interesting to hear these stories, and similarly with Hinckley being all about I'm a Mormon, and then Russell M. Nelson coming in with his own agenda saying, no, that's a win for Satan. And it's interesting. He threw Hugh, what's his name?
Hugh B. Brown.
Hugh B. Brown.
Yeah.
Having this meeting when some people are out of town. It's just interesting to hear the inner politics of these old white men in their little offices. Like, they all have their own agendas that they're pushing. And then when there's a new prophet, they're like, hey, the other prophet before me, all policy. I'm the one in charge now. It's all doctrine.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to hear.
Like that, I don't know if you all have heard this, but right now there's division in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles about the LGBT
I have heard that.
policies. They're liberal apostles.
Absolutely.
And there's ones that are hardcore. There's not unanimity even on that issue.
Well, who's the one in the apostleship that has a brother who is...
D. Todd Christopherson has a gay son, Tom Christopherson.
Oh, son? I thought there was also there's a brother.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Tom Christopherson is D. Todd Christopherson's brother.
It'd be really helpful if God could just tell them all where he stood on LGBTQ. Just like issues.
Visit a meeting
Well, I got
real
a few
quick.
policies if you want to go over some policies.
Yeah, it's just such a great point. Wouldn't it be great if there was a prophet that could actually talk to God and get the answer for us all?
Hey, if it's that confrontational, if it affects that many lives, you'd think it'd be kind of important.
But it's also again something that the Mormon church leaders intentionally perpetuate, this belief that they're, quote, special witnesses of Christ and talk to God and Jesus when they know they don't because they disagree with each other.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
When does the priesthood ban get lifted? When enough of the apostles die so that the quorum has unanimity. And then they call it revelation.
Yeah.
True.
It's
Right?
like God is like this high schooler being like, hey, I think this, but I'm going to tell so-and-so something else. It's like God is saying two different things to all of these different prophets. Like you'd think that if he was speaking to them, he would just say the one thing and they'd all agree, but they're all getting different answers from God apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mess. It's cool that we got to talk about that some. I think that's really important.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think this is the last prompt, right? The Mormon church has done good in the world. So this is maybe, Liz, you have a good moment here. I think all of you do. But
Mormon church has done good in the world. Agreeers, please step forward.
We all step forward.
We
Everyone
do a
steps
lot of
forward,
humanitarian aid. We give wheelchairs out to people in third world nations. I mean, there's a lot of good we do. I would agree that I would also say, there's some things that other religions do better than us. The LDS Church does a great job helping out those who are needy.
I think the church does do a lot of great humanitarian work, and a lot of the time growing up, it was like, what can we do for our neighborhood? What can we do for our church community? What can we do for our fellow ward members? They just preach a lot of service qualities, which is great. On the other hand, I think that, I hate to say they could do more, and that's the negative, but like with all of the money that they inherit from tithing, the Mormon church requires its members give 10% of their income before taxes to the Mormon church, and then they utilize that money to do things, around the world, like build malls. But I think that they could do more with the money they're doing. Yes, they do a lot of good, but I think they could do even more good if they utilize that money better.
When I personally had a surgery, and I had random members that I probably haven't even met from my church. They were leaving me gifts, they were leaving me notes, they were leaving me cards, just get well soon, nothing huge, but it's just the thought that counts. And I didn't even have family that would leave me things like that. They're just very thoughtful people, and they're always thinking of the next guy.
For especially the ex-Mormons, would you guys say it's more of a net positive or a net negative?
For me, it's going to be more of a net positive. And I know that's kind of surprising to probably a lot of people here. I left the Mormon church just a few years ago because it didn't make me personally happy. I get to kind of sit here today in a little bit of a happy position, just knowing that I don't really feel like I have a lot of religious trauma to speak of about my experience in the Mormon church. I feel like when I went on my mission and I was called to Houston, Texas, I got to meet some amazing people, and the things that I taught in Preach My Gospel that spoke to me, that I still know to this day are true, are all of the things that I still keep in my life, that I hold dear, that I associate, the friends that I have, the family that I keep, just all the connections that I have are within those truths that I hold dear. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and just say it's a net positive for me, and I'm really thankful for that.
So on the one hand, I know that there are ex-Mormons that are going to be cringing, Dylan, that you chose to say positive things, and I end up saying some positive things too.
I think even Jillian went for net positive as well.
Yeah, I think that's coming. That's coming.
Yeah,
wait, don't spoil my part.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it adds so much credibility. Like, I don't think we came off as angry, foaming at the mouth, rabid ex-Mormons. And I'm just really glad we were able to acknowledge good, even though there may be some who are like, why is he talking good right now?
Yeah, I would say that I would say that my prayer was answered when it came to this experience, because I wanted to be able to have a nuanced conversation with people, to listen, to not talk over, to not get angry, just to be able just to sit in this space of different ideas and I don't know if I could use the word codify because that'd be kind of funny, but like, no, I'm kidding. But just really, it couldn't have been a better experience for me, and something that I really will never forget. It's like I said before, and also at the time, like, it took everything out of me. When it was done, I was completely drained of energy, but I feel like it's because we truly gave it our all with our personal experience and our emotions, but never getting to the point, like you said, of getting angry or foaming at the mouth, but just really letting people know how we felt and where we stood. And I think that's the main reason why this was released to the public, is because it was genuine. It was time to get this out there.
I love that you got them all in there.
I wish they would have put a little this is like City Creek in Salt Lake City, and like little prompt on the screen.
And I forget if I mentioned this specific statistic in here and it just wasn't mentioned, but so they asked 10% of our income before taxes for tithing. And I think there was a report that Walmart donates more of its profits to charity than the LDS Church. The LDS Church donates 1%. Shouldn't they be also donating 10% of their money as tithing
And to be clear,
humanitarian work?
I don't think 1% is correct. I think that would be way
Really?
too high. I think
It may have been 0.08 or something like that.
No. I mean, just up until just a couple of years ago, it was like a teeny, tiny amount. And then it got a bunch of visibility. And then they said like $1 billion over like 20 years. But it's a teeny amount. And we've done episodes on this, they're counting like service hours and then multiplying them times like $21 or $22 an hour.
What?
Yeah, they're counting like member service. They're counting fast offerings.
They're counting the free janitorial work that all of the members do.
This is a whole thing. And
it's
I'll like
out
home
myself.
teaching, missionary work,
Then it's like 0.001% of their billions of
ridiculous.
dollars.
And check out the Widow's Mite report, because they actually talk about this in depth, but it's really disingenuous, because it's a teeny tiny fraction of the annual income, and there's no way it's 1%.
And it feels like such a, like, I know that some Mormons would hear this argument and be like, you're complaining that they're not doing enough good when they're doing so much good and they're doing humanitarian work. And if they're doing less than 1%, imagine if they did 10, which is what they ask their members to do.
Yeah, why isn't tithing less than 1%?
Yeah, and Jesus even said, like, he talked about the widow's mite, but he talked about proportional giving, that where much is given, much is required. So a $250 billion organization should literally, that, by the way, bears Jesus' name, should literally be the most altruistic giving organization in the world, and they're not by a long shot.
Maybe we should join the Church of Walmart.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I was going to out myself and just say that you said something about, even in the filming, I was like, because you said we're supposed to give, or it's like a policy to give 10% before taxes. I never gave 10% before taxes.
I gave more than
It was always after.
Dylan, that's why you're gay.
That's my illness.
Yeah.
That's why I can't join the eventual lawsuit if the church, because they're like, what? After taxes?
No, we were all taught to pay on
Actually,
our gross.
since we're on the topic of tithing, I just have a funny story about it really quick. I remember being taught that if you pay your tithing, blessings will follow. And so many people would bear their testimony. I paid my tithing, and a week later I got a new job. And it was like, because I paid my tithing, I got this new job. I remember I was like 18 or 19, and I was struggling with my belief in the church. And I was on the fence whether to pay my tithing or not one week. And I decided to not pay my tithing. Whoa. 2-3 days later, I got like a ton of new piano students. I'm a piano teacher. I got an influx of new piano students.
We're
I was
going to
like,
say F-ton? Is that what you're going to say?
I have no idea what
I felt that. I felt it too.
And after, yeah, I think I was. I got just like a ton of new piano students. I was like, if I had paid my tithing, I would have credited, I paid my tithing, that's why I got new piano students. I chose not to pay my tithing, and I still got the piano students. So it's like, maybe things just happen and we assign
God wants
meaning
us to be happy.
to things. Yeah.
I know so many ex-Mormons that became way more wealthy after leaving the church than before. So the church wants it both ways, that you won't prosper unless you pay your tithing. But then if you do prosper after leaving the church, well, wealth is wickedness, and Jesus denounced sin.
That's why I know that I was never meant for religion, because like he talked about, like, do you want gross blessings or do you want net blessings? I'm like, shit, I don't care. I'll get some net blessings. I just wait till I get that paycheck to see exactly what I have to pay before taxes. Good God, like I would never.
That's awesome. Okay, well, we're only got a couple of minutes left, so let's hear how it ends. When I was in middle school, my parents got divorced, and I think my life could have gone in a lot of directions at that point. And I remember one of my Mormon church leaders has pulled me aside, and he said, "John, you're a star." And so many good Mormon adult leaders rallied around me, supported me, and provided me with an amazing youth experience. And then I went on to serve a mission in Guatemala. I learned a foreign language. I spent 2 years in a developing country. And then just in my psychology training, people need identity, meaning, purpose, morality, a sense of spirituality, resolution about the afterlife, and friends and community. And one of the things that I regret is I've spent so much time trying to create secular community after being kicked out of the Mormon church. And I have not been able to do anything like what the Mormon church has been able to do. So until secular people are able to create communities that provide all those things to the secular people, I think religions like the Mormon church are going to continue to have an important place.
Yeah, I could say that a lot of the opportunities that I experienced, a lot of the mentors, a lot of the people that helped the village that raised me was within my church experience. And so my mission, I had positive experiences. I met a lot of incredible people, built a lot of good connections, but I don't know that, I know, yeah, there's humanitarian stuff, but I don't know if you can weigh that to the youth suicide in the LGBTQ community. I don't know if we can weigh that. It's just hard to weigh those things out of like, is the good better than the negative because of the spiritual trauma that it does cost, the emotional damage it does within families, within individuals. So I don't know that I could actually say which it does more of because the damage is so severe, but I know that there are positive experiences.
I can't have conversations like this with my family. It's not
Here it is.
a way we speak with each other. We can't have this open dialogue of what we disagree about. And maybe other families are different, but my family is very, very Mormon in that way, where very reactive and uncomfortable topics don't go well. And if I want to talk about the history or people of LGBTQ, it's not a conversation I can have. So having this conversation with all of you today almost was like a substitute for that.
So you need him to come to like family dinner?
Yes.
That's like,
that'd be great.
I'm not cheap. Well, so that concludes our episode of Mormons versus Ex-Mormons. If you guys want to embrace, shake hands, hug, whatever you guys need to do.
Group. Bring it in.
And then I gotta go to the bathroom.
And people are hugging. Liz gives a big old hug to Carden. All right, well, that was it. That's the video. We covered it. We played the full thing.
What a journey.
What a journey, yeah.
They cut out the trust fall
I think you'll really enjoy this discussion with author Dave
Greg.
Butler. I had the opportunity to sit down.
Greg Mattson does a surprise appearance. Okay. Well, what were we saying?
They cut out the trust fall attempt. I'm sure Jubilee cringed too hard. They're just like, we can't do it.
That was where Cardin jumps up.
In front of the camera.
And we all
Yeah,
just
what
sat
segment was
there.
that? Was that at the end?
The very end.
And tell people what he did.
Oh, he just got up right in the middle, went trust fall, and I knew that he definitely didn't trust himself to fall backwards because no one got out of their stools. It was just like, not the time, dude, not the time.
Yeah. I mean, so any other reactions now that you've seen the whole thing? Is there anything that stood out to you as things that were left off, things that should have been included? Overall impressions. We'll just go around. Liz, we'll start with you.
Sure. It was really fun to watch. Like I said, it was a journey. Last impressions. I definitely just feel as if we did a good job. I feel like we held our own.
Do you feel like we won? Did the Ex-Mormons win?
Of course.
Yeah?
Of course we would.
Jillian,
net positive.
Did the Ex-Mormons win?
Yeah, I think we came out on a net positive with that one.
It's codified. It's codified.
Seems a bit
Yeah.
disingenuous.
Did you think we won too?
For definitely, yes.
Yeah. And is that, how do we know if we're just biased? I mean, honestly, Cardin told me he thought we did really well.
Really?
He did. And also the woman.
Bella. I was
Did we
going to
say
say
what Bella said at lunch?
I talked to Bella afterwards. Oh, she's so great. I've invited her.
We all went to sushi. We all went to sushi.
Yeah, she came to lunch with us.
She was the only Mormon that came to lunch with us.
Yeah. And she came and sat down with us and she's like, guys, I kind of wish I could have swapped over to your side in the middle of that. She's like, I was kind of embarrassed by some things.
Yeah, she did.
I think we just spoke with our whole hearts and really just didn't let too much just stupid stuff get in the way of just speaking positively and with nuance. I think that's what they really wanted with this episode. Is the ones before that, it was missing that secret ingredient. It was missing that special sauce. And, I honestly really enjoyed watching that. That was definitely a net positive for me. Like, no joke. I really liked it.
There were so many moments where I got chills from what Jillian said, John, Dylan, all of you, where I was just moved.
You too.
And grateful.
Liz, you were amazing. That
you.
sweater, but also
It was the
your
sweater.
words.
Up in my game, that sweater for
I
sure.
missed the spatula, but it's...
She's there in spirit. No, I was just like, I was proud to be an Ex-Mormon. I was proud to be there. And I'm happy they included that thing at the end about my family, which was my intention. To just be able to talk about this kind of stuff without it blowing up and wrecking family dynamics, it was just nice to have like such an open dialogue about these issues.
Mm-hmm. I think it was really fun to watch again and just like have those moments and like see what it looked like and just watch different reactions and to relive it again, because I will say that there was a lot of anxiety beforehand. In the moment of it, it's so heated because you want to share your opinion, but you want to be respectful at the same time. And you also want to like share the platform with your team. And so there was so much energy. I remember every time we had to go back to the spotlight, I had to like do jumping jacks. I'm like, get the energy out.
You were like doing lunges.
I was.
Yeah.
I was like, because I just had to get it out because there's just so much anxiety and energy to it. But there were a couple things that I'm actually grateful they took out. I think some of the mansplaining from Cardin was really frustrating to me, and I think they took out a huge chunk of that, which I think did play to the benefit of hearing both sides. We were able to hear more and able to kind of follow the arguments a little bit better.
Yeah, because I felt like he was interjecting way too
Constantly.
much. Yeah.
And the mediator had to cut him off multiple times.
I started cutting him off, and maybe I was doing that too. But I think Cardin. I think Cardin came off way better in the cut, than he did in person.
That's what I was trying to say. Like a couple prompts back, is that they did a service to him because he really could have stepped into shit.
I mean, the whole episode is less than an hour, and we were filming for 3 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't say that meaning Cardin any harm. It's just he I think he was super stressed.
Yeah.
I think he was defensive. And I think he felt like he had to argue every single point.
Yeah. He does say some really cringy stuff in the masturbation prompt, though.
He was like, the Voldemort of Mormonism is in the building. I got to bring my A game. I got to be on top.
And I'm sure he felt the same pressure that we did, like that he had to represent something really big. And so I think I can understand the anxiety. I can understand, like, there was times that I was sitting next to him and his hands were shaking.
Yeah.
And there was times that he needed water and we had to pause filming. And so I did feel a lot of empathy towards him in that aspect, that we all felt pressure, and I'm sure he felt a lot of the weight on him too. And it just came out in a different way. But understanding, seeing, I think they did do him a service of just how much he was going at it. And it felt very hard for us, like for me at least, to be able to speak and to talk and to be clear. I mean, you can kind of see it, at least in the LGBTQ section, that he kept trying to cut me off. And I was like, no, stop, you need to listen. Because there was one that I was hoping would have made it and it didn't make it. There was a part. And the part was when they ask us, are Mormons misunderstood? That's actually a question that didn't make it into this at all. And they asked, are Mormons misunderstood to the world? And we all answered and everyone sat down and had their responses. And at the end, Liz asked him, Cardin, I have a question for you. Do you think ex-Mormons are misunderstood?
Oh my goodness,
I forgot.
yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And so
Director's cut.
He then goes and talks and talks and talks and goes around. I couldn't even tell you what he said, because he talked for so long that I stopped and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't understand your response. Can you tell us your response again and condense it? And then he looks at Liz and says, what was your question?
Yeah.
And I was like, you just responded for how long and didn't remember the question?
It was the most simple question too, like, because he had said earlier, right, I mean, you kind of just said it, like, Mormons are misunderstood, or he said, I think everyone is misunderstood, he said in an earlier topic. And so when it was asked later, I was like, hey, so if everyone is misunderstood, does that include us angry, anti-Mormon, ex-Mormons, And then he just talked in circles for like 5 minutes, and you were like, did you answer her question?
Yeah, just to like bring it back, because I just feel that a lot of these answers are just being so around the bush that it didn't get to the direct point. And so that one was cut out. So there's these moments that I feel like we're missing in this that I know we experienced, but for the most part, I feel that what was produced and what was shown was pretty accurate to my experience with it all. And at the end of it, they asked us, and they cut some of it out where they said, can we all talk about your experience with this? Like, everyone share what you experienced. And something that I had said at the end was that I respected Bella, because she was the one that wasn't on either extreme, but was honest, straightforward, and listened to her gut and said just honestly how she felt, whether it supported this side or supported that side. And so that was like my biggest takeaway was trust your gut and don't let any person or entity tell you what you should be responding to.
And then another thing that they cut that I remembered was when Kwaku spoke in the final prompt about how it's a very quick road to bigotry. But he said that without realizing that everyone in the ex-Mormon side did see it as a net positive. And then he decided to take that back. And I think that like the editors were probably like, oh, we probably don't want to have that moment because it just doesn't make him come off very genuine, because he didn't listen. Like, we did say it was a net positive, but he went into something about bigotry and hate. And that was like, we don't need that. Because he was wrong.
You're right. He was, because it was to my response.
Yeah.
That's why I gasped when I was done. They didn't put that in, because he responded to mine where I said, I can't say whether it's a positive or a negative. He said, well, doesn't that mean that you're becoming a bigot and that that's just fueling hate? And I was like, no, it's not fueling hate. And then this is actually an example of an analogy I gave, where he was like, no, don't you see, you're getting hate. You're just forming hate towards everything. And I said, no, this is how I see it, is that the church is like having a father who takes you fishing, who spends time with you, who puts a roof over your head, gives you food, but he's abusive. He's verbally abusive. He's physically abusive. Can you tell me, is it a net positive? Is it a net negative? Is it better to have a father that does that or to not have a father? I can't tell you, but I can tell you that that's been my experience, is that there's a lot of positive, but there's a lot of negative. And he's like, but you just said it was a net negative. And all of us were like, no, we didn't. So
no. And then you also said that the church sees LGBT people as a pet.
As a stray dog. You had so many moments that were cut.
They cut that.
I really do think that they wanted to give the Mormon side more of like a sure footing
More help?
because it
Tell
was.
people what she said.
It was.
Let's get it on film.
It was powerful.
Let's get it on film.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to remember what led into it. It was Cardin. I remember that. I was responding to him.
Well, it was the whole cancer thing, and it's an illness, and
I think you were
Yes.
talking about how LGBTQ, because they're saying, oh yeah, the church accepts them, and you're like, well,
We have
it's like
websites dedicated to them, and
it's like the LGBTQ are like a stray dog, where
Yes, that's right,
Right?
That's right. So yeah, they were saying how they're welcome, and even Timber's like, I feel so welcome. I love being there. Everyone's supportive, and I was like, yeah. Well, my experience personally of being an LGBTQ member in the church is that we're treated like a stray dog. That we, they publish and they show that like, oh, we fed them, we love them, we all gather around and we support them. But
we pet them.
We pet them. Good boy, good girl. Like, you're so great. You're so nice. But at the end of the day, there's not a spot at the table. You can't live in the home with them. There's no space for you here, and we don't understand why. And it just adds a lot of confusion because, yes, everyone looks and sees how everyone loves the stray dog, but at the end of the day, you're not part of the family.
and you're not allowed in the house.
Yeah, you're not allowed in the house. And
Yeah.
that's been my experience and a lot of others who have agreed with that.
I think that was probably the mic drop moment of the whole thing. So
I can't believe they didn't include
I
it.
don't know what they were thinking
Yeah.
with that. Yeah. Maybe there were technical problems. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
and the
hard to-
abusive father analogy as well was so spot on. You had so many great moments. Like your metaphors and analogies were just like, yes. And we didn't get to see so many
I'm
of them.
surprised. I didn't even realize they put them in.
I think maybe one of the main reasons with that, even though they were such amazing moments, is because middle ground is meant to be that nuanced conversation of balance, and we just killed it. Like, it was so good, and they really wanted it to be like equal because there's going to be so many different people watching this and having that experience and putting themselves in Kweku's position or Cardin's or mine or Jillian's. Like, everyone wants to be able to see themselves in this, and I think they're going to be able to be given a chance.
Yeah.
But we got to experience that, and that is what made it all so worth it.
Can we see now that it's been a few hours since it dropped? What's the view count now?
That's a great question. So as of right now, the Jubilee Mormons versus Ex-Mormons video has 59,000.
Okay. It's doubled since we last checked.
Yeah. I mean, if it hits 100,000 in the first 12 hours, that's quite good.
Yeah.
At least compared to my videos. So I hope it goes viral.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I hope they can catch this one too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We'll get this out in a couple of days. You said Bella did great. I again will say that I thought Kwaku came off a lot better than I thought he might.
Yeah.
I think he behaved a lot better than he has on Midnight Mormons and Word Radio in the past. It seems like he's gone through some changes. I think he said to Margie and I off screen that that this might represent a moment where he starts to move away from the apologetic, Mormon apologist media biz.
Yeah.
But it just seems like life over the past year maybe has taught him a thing or two.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of moderated.
I would agree with that because I, again, had never seen any of their content until I went home. And the next day, I just watched their views, their opinions of you. And I felt that it was so belittling. And I felt like it was such like cyberbullying on your end that I was so shocked to see how he was then representing himself with us that I was like, wow, either he's come a long way or he understands the seriousness of this. But I thought that he carried himself a lot better than I had seen in the past, which I love and respect because I think that everyone should have the opportunity to represent themselves better and that we don't have to hold people to who they were.
That's lovely. Because I did feel there was a moment, I think, when we were talking about our Mormons or ex-Mormons misunderstood, they cut it, but I had said something along the lines of, I was speaking about my family and how ex-Mormons are viewed as angry and are, kind of have this negative connotation. And I had said, and I locked eyes with Kwaku, and I was like, why is it, I get angry as an ex-Mormon, sure, because I think, why is it working for you and not for me? And we locked eyes.
That was a good moment.
And his face, and it seemed very genuine. It felt like he was really listening to me and empathizing. And I just saw it when I said, why is it working for you and not me? His face kind of almost broke a little bit. And I could tell that it hit him and he heard it. So I definitely saw a change in Kwaku, like versus some of the content of his I've seen before, and then his presence here in this debate, for lack of a better word, it definitely seemed different.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kwaku was quite warm to Margie and I after the show. And then Cardin came to me and he's like, I want you on Word Radio.
He said that to everybody.
He's like, come on Word Radio. I'll fly out to LA. And I'm considering it. We've been texting a little bit.
Really?
Like, I was really grateful, just to the point you made, I think, Jillian. I was really grateful that we were all in the same room, because I don't know, I had a lot of anger and probably some hatred for those guys. Putting us all in the same room and then having us have a dialogue really took all that energy out.
It brings in the humanity.
It totally did. And it made me wish that maybe here in Mormon Story Studios, we could recreate kind of a middle ground experience, because it really was kind of healing, you know, and it felt good. And I even left with the better relationship and maybe some optimism towards Cardin and Kwaku moderating their hate speech towards me and other people. So I was grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
awesome.
Cardin, I'm open to dialogue if we can set some ground rules where you guys won't lie or use hate speech, you know. I'm open to
fair.
it. Yeah.
I am curious to hear their take on the episode, if they
Definitely.
do a reaction video of their own.
Oh, they will. They probably are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to say that, yeah, we won, but can you imagine having to represent the church's position? So hard, impossible. They don't even do it. The First Presidency Quorum of the 12, they don't grant media requests, because it's how do you stand up for the bigotry and the cringiness of modern Mormonism?
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like we were saying earlier with the fact that they would probably not say anything or most of what they said over the podium. You know, I think it shows that, I don't even know what I'm saying. That's all I got. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Well, any final words? This was amazing. I love you all. I was so honored to be with all of you. I thought you guys were amazing, and I was humbled to be with you. Any final thoughts? Any final words to the audience?
Yeah, with this experience, it was just my first time being able to be a part of something like this. I actually haven't seen anything related to Kwaku or Cardin or any other content. I just saw them as people, the way that they showed up at that discussion. And there were times where Cardin really gave me the cringe, and other times where I felt the humanity, likewise with other people. But I was really glad that I could come in as my authentic self, and that Jubilee chose me to represent my feelings and associations with the topic. And I had a really, really good experience, and I'm really grateful that I could do this today as well.
Beautiful.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, same. It was definitely an honor to be with all three of you on that, just such a special day. I really felt like it was historic. It just felt
generational is what you said.
It just felt really special. I was very honored, and it was cathartic, and it was great. So I mean, kudos to Jubilee for putting something like this on to let ex-Mormons and Mormons specifically talk about these issues. It was just a beautiful experience. I loved it.
I think the biggest thing I want to say with all of this is that, going back to one of the questions, is like, are Mormons misunderstood? Are ex-Mormons misunderstood? Is John Dehlin misunderstood? Is Mormon Stories podcast misunderstood? Is Jillian Orr misunderstood? Yes. Everybody is. No one is fully going to get their full intentions across. No one is fully going to share what they deep down feel or experience, and those things are going to consistently change as we get more information. And I think for me, the biggest part of all of this is that we can all get out there and share our thoughts and be a voice for one side or another, but at the end of the day, everyone gets to pick what they feel is right for them and what they want to follow and what they want to believe and whatever makes them the happiest, and that we just give each other compassion, and that we just come to the table, bring what we have, and then cherish what we have that's right for us. Like, that's really the biggest takeaway from all of this is for me.
Love it. Yeah. Yep. Well, it was a beautiful time. I'm grateful to have been a part of it, and I hope everyone liked it. Please recommend the original Jubilee video to everyone and their cat and their dog. Post it everywhere on social media. Like it. Comment on it. subscribe to the Jubilee channel. Like, do whatever you can to make this episode go viral, dear viewers and listeners. I know Kara Burrell, Nuance Hill, is going to be doing a reaction video to this. We always love Kara. Check out what she's doing. Yeah, and while you're at it, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Mm-hmm. And anything y'all want to say about just what's up for you going forward in your lives or anything? Or, I mean, you'll be getting your EGOT soon, right, Liz? Emmy, Grammy, Oscar,
right.
Tony?
Yeah, definitely. I'm shooting for all of them.
At the same time.
I mean, you're talented enough.
Thank you.
To get an EGOT.
Get her on the screens.
Can you tell people how to follow you?
Sure. I live in Los Angeles. I'm an actress, and I sometimes talk about ex-Mormonism. So if you want to follow me, my Instagram is Liz Gunnell, 2 N's, 2 L's. And I'm Lord Liz on TikTok.
And it's fun stuff. So,
thanks. I play piano. I post some piano videos sometimes.
She's really good.
And you
the
teach
piano's
piano.
amazing.
And I teach piano. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Liz, what's up for you, Dylan?
Oh, yeah, I don't really do social media too much. I do have an Instagram, and it is Dillan Conrad, Dillan. In the video, they're spelling it different, but that's fine, whatever. But I just, if you want to reach out through Instagram or whatever, that's totally cool. I love having conversations like this and just getting to know people.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. All right, Jillian.
I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Jillian Oreo, like the cookie is my TikTok. I had to check. I was like, is that what it is? But Jillian Orr, O-R-R, that's my full thing. Right now I'm loving going and speaking, public speaking, going into companies and organizations and empowering people both on, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as empowering and making decisions in your life. That's something that I love doing and working with organizations, but this has been fun. I'm just loving moving forward and seeing what life brings, and hopefully one day I will own a Shetland pony. That's the goal in life, is own a Shetland pony. That's where I'm moving forward.
Happen.
I'm moving forward.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. And thanks to you, viewers and listeners, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. Share it. Be kind to each other. Be good to each other. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care. And thank you, Jubilee. Thank you so much for doing it, Jubilee. Y'all did a great job. You did a huge service to our community. Mm-hmm. So Jubilee, Middle Ground, all the staff, thank you so much for what you guys did. We really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.